And we're live. Live reactions to Watches and Wonders 2025. I'm Blake Mallon, co-founder, CEO of Worn & Wound, joined by Devin Pennypacker, media manager.
Hello, hey.
You're joining us for Watches and Wonders live reactions. This is exciting because this is the first time we're doing live reactions to Watches and Wonders. This is the first time we're doing a YouTube live stream.
Yeah.
So many firsts. We're breaking a lot of barriers here today.
Tons. Yeah, this is going to be a pretty cool one.
Yeah, no, we're excited. If you guys have read the post on Worn & Wound about the live stream, I was saying, I think my favorite part of Watches and Wonders is always getting to sort of dish on what happened at Watches and Wonders once everybody gets back. Because oftentimes the whole editorial team will leave and then it's just us plebes here in the office sitting with our hands under our butts.
Sifting through the random articles that come out at random times.
And you never know what's actually good and what's not. And you really just want to dish. So this is what this is all about. We're just going to hang out, have a good time. Neither of us have handled the watches.
I will say I've handled.
Oh, that's true.
I've handled a handful of these. Yes, I've had hands-on. I've had hands-on with a couple of these models.
Yes,
here.
that's right. The Grand Seiko watches were in our office.
Yeah. IWC as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm in the loop. So this is just gonna be a fun conversation. Again, if you read the Worn & Wound post about this or in the comments in the description, we're going to be having one of our contributors, Griffin Bartsch, call in a little bit later in the show and give his thoughts and feelings. And assuming that the Wi-Fi in Geneva is good enough, we will be going live with someone from our team on the floor of Watches and Wonders, and hopefully getting a little bit of a tour around the show, just getting a chance to ask the team some questions, which I'm really
some legitimate
about.
behind the scenes footage, not produced, not edited,
raw and uncut. Let's just jump into. Oh, I should also say this is a hot take safe zone. You should be contributing your hot takes to the comment section below. We're going to throw them onto the screen if you happen to have any good hot takes, and we'll debate them. We'll roast them. We'll tell you why you're wrong or why you're right.
Yeah. If you know me, you know I came with quite a few hot takes.
Of course. All right, so let's just jump into it. So I think the obvious place to start is with Rolex. So
have to.
Yeah. So what are the biggest releases from Rolex? What's the most important thing that Rolex came out with? I think we all know it's the Land Dweller.
Yeah. Best name in the business.
Yeah. Do you want to give a quick overview for folks who maybe haven't sort of seen the news about it?
Yeah, for sure. So Rolex has done integrated bracelets before, especially back in the 70s, a little bit in the 80s. So this isn't really a new design for them. This is something that they've done before, but what they've done is they've kind of taken it, they've tweaked it, they've put a new bracelet on it, a flat link Jubilee, which is pretty cool. They put a new movement inside, thinned out the case architecture, changed the fluting on the bezel, really just took every piece of what they've done before, did a little mashup, and then tweaked all of the small details. For me, the most impressive thing is the caliber inside, the 7135 from Rolex, which is a 5 hertz caliber. So they're doing some high beat frequencies now in this integrated design, which is really interesting, and keeping it still at a pretty slim case thickness, which is impressive. We're used to seeing Rolex do new things. I think for me, there are some big takeaways from this model, and that is really that number one, unfortunately, it leaked. We saw leaks of the escapement. We saw leaks of the balance spring. We saw leaks of this watch in particular. Thanks, Roger Federer, for ruining the surprise for all of us. But that's something that doesn't happen from Rolex ever. I think that also this is the first time we've seen Rolex kind of follow a trend rather than lead the trend, which is kind of interesting. Going into the integrated design kind of long after other brands have. But of course they did it in their own take. They innovated, they changed everything about it. And it's a really interesting design. I know as soon as it popped up, I was like, oh, this is a big one. This is a big one that everyone's going to talk about. I don't know. When you saw it at first, how did it appear to you? Yeah,
it's a new watch from Rolex. So it's just by default going to be something that people talk about. And then I think the design, I think it's fair to call it a little bit divisive.
Sure.
I think people are going to have their feelings about it. One thing, shout out to all the brands that have their Watches and Wonders release web pages. If you're watching on YouTube, which I guess if you're hearing me, that's the only way you know what we're doing. We have we're going to pull up the websites of the brands releases, and we're also going to bring up our articles and stuff like that. Some of these brands have some like real fever dream websites.
They're amazing.
They're really intense. Maybe not the best for a live stream. We'll see. Hopefully this all comes across.
I mean, this is incredible though.
Oh yeah, no, the movement. I mean, I think that again, I'm never claimed to be the most sophisticated horology expert in the world, but from what I understand, like the story is the movement, and I think that. Again, based on like preliminary conversation I've seen online, like it feels like maybe the design is a little bit distracting, like the integrated bracelet of it all, like the Explorer numerals on the dial, like the honeycomb pattern.
Not exactly Explorer numerals, though. So that's the whole weird thing too. Is again they just tweaked all of the details a little bit. So like the lume is not fully encapsulated in the numerals and inside of the indices on there. You have that honeycomb dial, which they don't tend to do a lot of texture dials, except for you look at like the 1908 with like that really beautiful guilloche. This is kind of a bit more mundane, I guess, in terms of texture. So yeah, it is interesting. And then I mentioned the fluting on the bezel. This is like a super nerd thing, but they stepped down the fluting to give it more peaks and valleys, or I guess more drastic peaks and valleys. So if you look at it next to like the Sky Dweller, and then obviously the 1908, this is going to be I believe your least fluted between the three. Which just gives it like a chunkier, bold feel, which I think actually blends really well with that polished center link kind of display on there. But it does, again, kind of distract a little bit too. Like if you're looking at the screen right now, that 9, that 6 kind of disappear, which is weird. Like legibility is obviously not the key factor here. So that's an odd thing too, because we're used to seeing really good, bold visuals from Rolex in terms of legibility, and this is not really that. And I agree. I think the statement here is that movement. To put a 5 hertz movement in your first back from the archive integrated design in a very long time, that's a big deal. They're not the only ones out there doing 5 hertz. They're like not the first by a very long shot. But it is really interesting too when you look at Rolex's archive, because even when they were looking back like a long time ago, when they were using El Primero, which was running at 5 hertz back in the day, they would slow it down to 4 hertz. So at that time, they weren't even using a 5 hertz movement. So it's really interesting to see them put it in a 3-hander here. I'll be interested to see how well they do out there. I think the Datejust is still kind of like that entry-level Rolex model that people want. That's the boardroom watch that we see on a lot of brokers and bankers and stuff like that. And I think it's going to continue to be. I don't really know exactly who this watch is for, because like I mentioned, we saw it on Federer, very famous tennis player. I don't see this as a sport watch at all. So it's kind of an odd pairing for me, for sure.
I threw a comment up on the live stream from our friend Sean Martin, friend of Worn and Wound. Got to hang out with him in Dallas. Tall friend, very tall. Makes me feel like a short person, which is fine. But he was saying he thinks I think that's a complaint I saw with Rolex should be leading, not following trends. I can't disagree with that, though I do like the land dweller design. I think that's going to be like a lot of ultimately at the end of the day, when the dust settles, I feel like that's going to probably be the take.
Also bad name.
Yeah. Weird name. But I mean, like, all gripes aside, I think people are probably going to see it as with all Rolex models. It's probably going to feel nicer and look nicer on your wrist than like most other watches. We've talked about that a ton on our podcast and stuff like that, just how, maybe a certain Rolex model isn't to your taste, but then you get it on your wrist and you're like, okay, this is right.
That's true for all of them, right?
Yeah.
Like,
and I'm sure
we
that's
can roast them all day long and say that they look a little bit plain, but they are they're amazing. I remember the first time I put a Submariner on, and leading up to that moment, I'd kind of roasted it, just like, I never will own a Submariner. I don't think it's that great. And then I put it on, I'm like, okay, crap. This bezel is just incredible. So I think that's true. This will probably be the same thing where we put it on, we try it on, and we're like, oh, okay, this is impressive. Yeah. The horrible thing would be if we put it on and went, oh, this doesn't feel that good. And then at that point, holy cow, what a weird swing and miss.
I just like feel like that's not going to happen. Like I feel like you have to give them the benefit of the doubt.
The good news is we won't see one of these for like 8 months.
Yeah. I will also say that one of my immediate thoughts after seeing this, and we should jump to the other Rolex releases, is that when they come out with this, not with the honeycomb dial in a different color, I think I'll have very different feelings about the design of it.
Yeah, so I kind of hope, honestly, and let's jump to the GMT Master 2, because I actually wish that they had done the ceramic dial in the land dweller. I think that would have been kind of interesting because it would have just allowed the movement to be more of the story. Whereas now there's so much busyness going on the top of the watch that you forget to look underneath. Whereas with the GMT Master 2 here, you get to this one, we have a ceramic dial, which is pretty cool for the first time. Ceramic bezel insert split between that black and green in a lefty GMT. Of course, they didn't do it in steel. Of course, they had to mix it with white gold.
I have to say, when I saw this copy that I have up on the screen here, same material, same color, same luster, like, what brand comes out with like a brand new design is like, you know what the marketing language is going to be?
Yeah.
Same everything.
Yeah.
Everything's the same. But you know you want it because we changed this one little thing. And it's just so amazing. It looks beautiful, and I'm sure that the ceramic dial is very cool in person. I mean, I'd love to hear, Kat and Zach and other Zach thoughts on.
I did see some people saying that it looked pretty flat in person, that the ceramic dial looked pretty flat, which is interesting because obviously you want ceramic for that kind of, liquid glossy texture. At least that's what I want from ceramic. I don't want it to be super flat. So it is kind of interesting. It's also a weird time. Again, we talked about Rolex following the trend rather than leading the trend. Ceramic dial for the first time. I mean, guys, we've been seeing some excellent ceramic pieces come out from other brands for much lower price points. You look at like Formex. You look at Bamford. Yeah, Bamford just did a bunch of ceramic for a price point that, frankly, we didn't think was possible. And then Rolex comes out and they're like, hey, we're doing a ceramic dial for the first time, but you have to buy it in white gold, and it's a lefty, and it's a color that some people don't really like. So it's just kind of strange again.
The Destro thing is interesting.
I love a left-hand drive. What is weird is, honestly, on this model in particular, and I couldn't really tell you why, it feels a little unbalanced. And maybe it's just like the press images because the hands are not quite lined up as much as we typically see them in press releases, that it just kind of makes me feel like the whole thing is leaning to the left a little bit more than normal. Obviously it is because it's a lefty. But I mean, traditionally, like, I love a lefty. The Pelagos LHD is still like one of those watches that when I see it, I have to put it on. So I'm glad to see it. I think it's cool.
Yeah, but nothing earth-shattering here, I don't think.
No.
Yeah.
Neat, but not wake you up in the morning neat.
Yeah. Fresh look for the OP.
Cool.
And
ooh, yeah.
A new 1908.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I'm a tool watch guy. Everyone, I think, knows that, but I have really weird taste when it comes to like dress watches. I think I'll pull a model up in our Slack chat and be like, yeah, I love this. And everyone looks at me like, who is this guy? This watch is kind of stunning. That bracelet's really nice.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about later on some new bracelets and other models from other brands that I think really are a good standout feature of watches this year. I am glad to see that Rolex kind of, in my opinion, nailed the look and feel of this one. We saw it in the Platinum with that blue dial. Here again, I talked about them kind of simplifying the dial to let everything else shine. That's exactly what they did here. They scaled that dial back. They let that gold really pop. They put this stunning bracelet on there. I'm sure it could have had better end links. It's a bit odd. But overall, I think that this is really beautiful. And it's really close to like, it feels like those vintage pieces that everyone is lusting after right now, but in a fully modern way.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I haven't, personally really spent time with this watch, but the feedback I've heard of people who had it in hand is that it's really lovely, even if it's not like necessarily to your taste. Again, you get it in hand and you get it on your wrist, and it's like really pretty amazing. I also like, again, I think their marketing copy is great. Rarely has solid gold felt so supple and light on the wrist. To have enough experience with gold on your wrist to identify when it's more or less supple is like a real flex, I think.
It is, well, especially because one brand in particular that I'm going to bring up later that I made sure was on a rundown has a very supple gold bracelet on it that I think kind of kicks the pants off of this one.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that one later.
Devin's our supple gold correspondent.
Yeah. That is actually why I'm here. I'm here for dual bezels and supple gold. It is interesting. Sean actually brought this up too. The display case backs. Rolex is just kind of throwing them out there now, which for the longest time was not the case. And now all of a sudden, boom, we've got a couple new models with display case backs. They're really showing off their movement technology. And I think a lot of that has to do with finishing too. Okay. Going back to the Land Dweller for just a moment, they have Côte de Genève on their movement, but it's not like the standard Geneva striping and stuff like that we're used to. It is Rolex's striping. So they broadened the center strip on the movement finishing and polished it just to make theirs look a little bit higher finished. We are not used to seeing higher movement finishing from Rolex. If you open up a vintage Rolex, it might be running beautifully, it might be keeping excellent time, but they're not going to be the most beautifully finished movements. We're seeing now Rolex is taking the extra time to finish their movements to a higher level than we've seen before. On the 1908, on this Land Dweller. That's a pretty interesting thing that I think we should take note of, because they have a very interesting history with complications and with movements that hopefully that's a sign of things to come, that we're going to start seeing more of this kind of stand out. Or at least give us the option, because not all of us want to engrave the case back.
I have to say, I mean, and we can move on from Rolex for now. Always can come back if folks want to chat about it.
There's 3 we got to talk about before we leave.
Oh, okay.
If you scroll all the way down, I think it's on the same page.
It's going to be on the novelties, or is it?
It is a new novelty for Watches and Wonders. Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're going to have to go back to novelties here. But they did something that I think we all speculated. I moaned and groaned about a little bit. No, not that. Just keep going. Here we go. All right. Exclusive dials. Have you seen this?
I've seen this watch, yes.
Keep going. There are 3 exclusive dials here.
Oh, interesting.
So you most people at this point know my take on stone dials. Tiger iron dial? That thing looks pretty wild. The legibility is whack, but like that is a pretty striking dial, and to put it in like that root beer configuration, very cool. Blue lacquer inside of gold, I think looks pretty cool. And then that sunburst green dial on the Sky Dweller is just pretty awesome, contrasting against that gold. That green and gold just seems to be a big hit for a lot of people, and so it's cool to kind of put it in a model that, in my opinion, people don't pay enough attention to. So, yeah.
No, it's cool. I was just gonna say, I think for Rolex, typically, I think my personal response to them every year is interesting, or maybe not so interesting sometimes. I'm sure their watches are all very nice. But not like in a super rush to see it in person. I'm really intrigued by the Land Dweller. Like, I think I'm just curious to see, how that hits on all levels, or if it doesn't at all. But let's move on to Tudor, Rolex's little sister, little brother, friend.
I mean, you can call it
cousin.
Little if you want to, but they've really been kind of eating the lower end lunch for a little while now.
Eating the lower end lunch.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did, which is why I bulked up faster than my older brother.
So they have a bunch of new watches this year, and I think that probably more intriguing, more hits for our audience, maybe necessarily than the Rolex is. More things people are going to kind of immediately want to go out and purchase.
But I think fewer than we've seen in the past. This feels like a more iterative year than innovative year for Tudor, which is interesting. Okay, you want to start with this Black Bay 58? They call it burgundy.
Sure.
But like, man, that's a striking red.
It's ruby.
That is ruby red right there.
Red.
Very cool red.
Super cool red, and it's exciting that it comes on the 5-link now.
Yes, thank you.
Unfortunately, you can't get any other Black Bay 58 on a 5-link. It's not. I don't think that it's available on any of the other models.
Not to my knowledge, at least not at this time.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, you could buy both and then swap the bracelet.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
I'm going to dig through the comments. We did get a comment about this watch earlier in the show.
Oh, cool.
But do you want to give a quick kind of rundown on what the story is, maybe aside from the new color?
Yeah, so this is pretty cool. So shout out to all the wrist historians out there who are talking about old vintage models, because this is a vintage Tudor Submariner reborn for the modern audience. So Tudor did a red Submariner back in the day, red dial, red bezel, and this one just kind of popped up out of nowhere. It's one that old Tudor sub, I don't think is one that people really were clamoring for, if they even knew about it at all. So it's really cool for Tudor to dig into the archive and pull this one out. When they did the Tudor Black Bay Burgundy, which was like the first Metas Black Bay, I really love that one. When they did the monochrome, which they don't call the monochrome, that one really stole the show for me. I still think I prefer a simpler aesthetic over the striking red, but this thing, when it's out in the sun, it's gonna catch the rays and it's gonna explode off the wrist. That red is really gonna be a striking piece to have out there, and it's a unique one for the dive watch category, because you don't see red a whole lot in dive watches, which is kind of cool. Mostly because it doesn't perform super well at depths. But
if you're buying this watch to go diving with, you're one of a small minority. I did throw a comment up on the screen from Hussam. Hopefully, I'm not butchering your name. I don't understand why Tudor can't get the colorway correctly. Beautiful burgundy dial color. Why not retain the black bezel with burgundy red triangle? Yeah, I mean, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if you see those colorways, variations moving forward.
Yeah.
I think I might agree with you that to my taste, I think that might have been a little bit more of like an interesting design decision.
Sure.
I will say, I remember at Basel World several years ago, dating this conversation because Basel World hasn't been around for a while. A Tudor PR person said very directly, we want there to be a black bay for everybody.
Yeah.
It was sort of the first year, I think, where they came out with just a ton of different black bays. It was almost overwhelming to put them all on the table.
Yeah.
And they were just like very forward about like, we want you to be able to have a black bay for every occasion, every style. Every person should be able to find their style in a black bay. So, this definitely seems like maybe a step in the more sort of refined dressy diver.
Yeah.
But again, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw them messing with colors, but continuing to keep this kind of like more luster. I mean, this is also not the first time they've put like sort of a sunburst, gloss like with the Pelagos 39.
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah,
That's
doing
like sort of
the sunburst brushing on the bezel.
Yeah.
It is interesting, and I mean, I firmly believe that at some point we're going to have a bespoke Tudor service where you go on their website and you tell them exactly what colors you want all the components to be, and then they ship you your one of one, and like that's where it's going to be, because we have so many black bays that are now creeping onto the market, so many different color options and bezel options, whatever. It obviously it's a collection that is getting a little convoluted at this point because of the naming nomenclature, but overall, I'm just glad to see more inclusions in here. I know that 39 millimeter is still the sweet spot for most people. I know the black bay is still like the quest after entry level luxury diver, whatever you want to call it. So to just have more colors of it, I think is pretty awesome. But talking about the black bay for everybody, do you want to switch over to the other black bay?
So real quick, just adding one more comment. First live stream, still working out the you can see the comments that I'm putting in the live stream.
Yeah, absolutely can.
A little bit of a delay. I actually put another comment up from MJ. Does the red black bay 58 having the 5-link mean it will fit across other black bay 58s? Don't know this for sure, but I would have to assume yes. I think we probably would have heard at this point if this case was different in any way.
Right.
So I would be surprised. I almost wonder if the reason they didn't make it available on the other models is because they know that everyone's going to want to get, like, so many of their customers are going to try to get one for theirs.
Right.
And there's like a production consideration there.
Right.
Personally, like, I once had a Batman Rolex GMT. I had it on the Jubilee. I've definitely like been black bay curious for quite some time, and if I did get one, I would definitely get it on the 5-link.
You have to, yeah. When I put the monochrome on in the 5-link the first time, like that is what sold me on that watch. T-Fit, of course, obviously too. Yeah. Incredible. Well, I think too. Okay, very quickly before we transition to the other black bay, we're talking about 5-link. Can we put this on the other black bays? We said the same thing when they did the Tudor Chrono. And as we saw today, now all of the Tudor Chronos are coming with a 5-link, or they can be optioned with a 5-link. So again, that was a question that we were asking Tudor when the 5-link came out on the Black Bay Chrono. We were like, hey, can we get this for other ones? Can we put it on other ones? And they said, for right now, you can only get it on the new, was it the pink that it launched on?
Yeah, maybe.
Or something like that. And yeah, so they had that same PR answer of, for now, you can only get it on this one. But I think we all assumed that we could put it on other models out there, and now obviously confirmed you absolutely can, and you can buy those models with it, but from my understanding they're still not quite available as an aftermarket purchase, at least up front. Maybe if you know some people and know some ADs pretty well, you might be able to get one.
But great question. MJ, I think that is something that a lot of folks are definitely going to be looking forward to
for sure.
So let's jump over to their other new watches. So sorry about that.
Jumped
folks.
A little too far.
A little peek behind the scenes. These brands don't make it super easy to navigate their new watches. All right, so I think we can go a couple different directions. Let's just go in the order they presented.
Let's just go in order. Yeah, that's totally fine.
The Pelagos Ultra.
This is the one I want to talk about.
Okay. So I owned a Pelagos previously.
Okay.
To be perfectly honest, in the sort of torrent of Watches, Wonders news that came out this morning, I've not really had a chance to read up on this one and what makes it so much different.
Sure.
So yeah, I'd love to hear your take, and I agree. I really enjoyed mine. Would consider getting another beefy Pelagos.
Yeah.
What's the story?
Well, so this is the most technical Pelagos ever made. 1,000-meter diver. To be honest, I guess at the end of the day, like if you really look at it and you boil it down, there's just not a ton of changes here, except for, you've got 1,000 meters on there. You still have the flushly mounted helium escape valve. You still have a pretty awesome clasp. Really dumb little design detail, but I love these little hits of, I don't know what they're not teal, but like they're kind of that pale
that
blue.
Ooh.
Like
Wow.
on the clasp. So like you have it on the clasp, you have a little bit on the dial.
Yeah.
Man,
for those who heard me just squeal like a child, it was on the resizing, the quick resizing on the buckle. There's it looks like there's a blue accent color, unless that was loom. I can't imagine it is
on the dial or on the clasp.
On the clasp,
I don't believe so.
Yeah, that is very cool.
Yeah.
I am a big fan of that.
This just into Griffin, who will be joining us in a little while here, did confirm that the new 58 is 0.2 millimeters thinner. So there's that. We're talking about so maybe I believe it'll still fit.
Strike that.
Yeah. You can still. I'm gonna put my staple in it right now that you can put that 5 link on a modern 58. Maybe not the old 58s, but yeah.
We'll hope so.
Yeah.
I think that would be. I would love that.
Yeah.
One of the just throwing a comment up on here from Unseen Hero. We're seeing you now.
Mm-hmm.
Comments. It feels like Tudor gave up on the indices being sent into the rehaut. Sad.
That is a huge bummer.
Yeah.
I think this one had to be a little bit. So in order to not make this watch crazy thick, we had to sacrifice a little bit of that spacing between the dial and the crystal, which means that the rehaut is not sloped, it's now flat, and the indices don't cut into it like it did before. So I could be wrong, but I assume that that's where that's coming from. If they wanted to keep cutting it into the rehaut, we would have to see the watch be a little bit thicker than it currently is, which then people would start complaining about that whole thing. It is a bummer, though. That is one of those little design details, too, that when I saw that on the Pelagos for the first time, I really was like, wow, that's a cool little feature. It's weird. It gives more depth and shadow to the dial.
Yeah.
It does obstruct it at like extreme angles, which I know some people complained about, though honestly, like that lume is so good, you'd never notice.
Just looking at the comments. Thanks for the comment, Unseen Hero. I think, Sean Martin throwing in thinner Black Bay 58 isn't a bad thing. I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think, going back to the Black Bay 58, I mean, whether the bracelet fits the other models or not, I think, which hopefully it does.
Yeah, hopefully.
A thinner diver like that is definitely not something I don't think anybody would be upset over.
No. Everyone wants those thinner, as long as they don't thin out the bezel any further. A thinner case side would be nice, because the old ones, especially the original ones with the smiley, like those kind of sat like a slab on the wrist.
Yeah.
So
we were
nice.
We were not a fan of those when those first ones came out.
Yeah, they sit large. They
sit
really large on your wrist. So it's nice to see that they're giving them a little bit more shape and dimensionality.
Yeah, for sure.
One last thing too here, we have METAS certification.
Cool.
So I mean, 1,000-meter diver, METAS certification, awesome extension, little pop of color. What's not to like about that? The Pelagos just has. It's one of those watches that it looks a little bit ordinary when you see it in press releases, when you see it online, and then you put it on your wrist and you're like, oh, this thing is serious. Like, this is an incredibly serious watch. Grade 2 titanium, just really, really well finished for titanium too.
Yeah.
Wears like nothing else out there. Just a really, really cool one.
Yeah. And should note the price increase.
So
it looks like, your standard issue Pelagos is going to come at $5,200. The Pelagos 39 is going to be at $4,875, and this new model is going to be $5,950. So, with taxes and whatnot, you're looking at an over $6,000 watch. Which, not to say that it's not worth that money, but
sure,
we could debate that. But
I mean, you're getting 1,000 meters, you're getting METAS, you're getting titanium, you're getting a pretty advanced clasp system.
Yeah.
I struggle to find anything that can hit all of those boxes in the same way for the same price point.
Yeah. It definitely feels, though, like we're just a few years away from, people who maybe have been looking at Rolex pricing for the last 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Being like, Pelagos costs how much a sub used to cost.
Yeah.
Not too long ago,
Actually, it is interesting now that I'm looking at this too. I could be wrong on this, but it does look like the new Pelagos Ultra has a toothier bezel similar to the Pelagos 39, whereas the old Pelagos, fantastic bezel, but a little less toothy on the grip. So that's good for wet hands and for gloved hands and stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. moving along in the Tudor releases. There are more, hits that people are excited about.
Sure.
Maybe not this one. For me personally, the Black Bay 68.
Yeah, Black Bay for everybody.
Yeah.
Big boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, let's talk about this. Watches for the big boy. These are 43 millimeter case Black Bays.
They are. Yeah.
I mean, you talk about how you wear a bigger wrist.
I do. Yeah, I love big watches.
Bigger watches.
Yeah.
I have a somewhat larger wrist. I don't personally wear watches quite as large as I think you do. That's not my preference, but I think I don't know. I'm curious how many people really were looking for a Black Bay 43. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't. Well, especially because we just talked about how they wear a little bit larger than you would expect them to because of their kind of slab profile. So realistically, like a Black Bay 58, which is a 39, it wears closer to like a 40 to 40 and a half. This is going to feel like a 44, maybe even 45 on the wrist because of how it wears. So for me personally, I think this is kind of getting to the point where it's a little too big. Which again, for me is like, you wear a 45 millimeter Planet Ocean, you wear a 44 millimeter Oris Pro Pilot. Like, what are you talking about? It's just the dimensionality of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I think we are kind of coming into an era right now that is kind of cool, where we have a lot of people who are feigning towards smaller dimensions, where they want that vintage classic fit on their wrist. We have a lot of people who are feigning towards the larger dimensions, where they want a bold statement piece. They want something that shows up. They can read it a little bit easier. Tudor now hits both of those customers and the people in the middle with these new releases. So
I'm throwing a comment up on the screen from Rob.
Cool. Yeah.
W117. Their user image is the Vans logo. If you own Vans, holler.
I'm wearing them. So
we'll take some shoes.
Yeah.
He says 68 is a super smart move by Tudor. Opens up the simple Black Bay design to a larger wrist buyers. A lot of focus on the smaller recently. Totally valid. I mean, I think like 100%. The Black Bay, what's the really tiny Black Bay called? The Black Bay.
The one, the 54?
Yeah. I mean, that's quite small, I think.
Very small.
Yeah.
But it still, again, wears a little large because of its dimensionality.
Yeah. But I think I would say that's probably a model that on paper feels like daringly small for a dive watch from a mainstream company.
For sure.
I think that's a fair point, Rob. Like, moving up to 43 millimeters for this watch feels a lot less daring in the grand scheme of things, albeit not to our taste, let's say, or our preference. But yeah, I think that's a good call. We
can talk about it again, though, here too. I believe we have META certification in these watches for the movements, which is really awesome to see. Master chronometer, for those who are curious what I'm talking about here. I think it's really weird that we see a silver and a blue dial with a black bezel, because I think we're really used to seeing a gilt dial for the first release in any of their lines. That was kind of a huge criticism that they took last year for the Black Bay 58 GMT, is that it was the gilt dial and people were upset about that. Well, boom, here's a new Tudor that doesn't have gilt on the dial.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, again, not trying to crap on these or anything, but I think for the folks who are looking for that larger Black Bay model, I think that's going to be really exciting. If that's not something you're looking for, I think this is maybe something you're not going to think a ton about.
For sure. And same with like the Black Bay 36, the non-dive version, the everyday version. I think a lot of people forget that exists too. Speaking of integrated designs, the Tudor Royal, it exists in the catalog, and that nobody thinks about.
Yeah.
Really cool watch, especially in the salmon dial. But Tudor just has a wide catalog for a lot of people out there. And while we might only talk about the Black Bay Chrono and 58, they want to make sure that they service customers all over the place and in every country, because different countries have different wearing experiences, I guess.
Yeah, I have some bad news. Rob is not the owner of Vans. He's just a fan, so
all right,
no free shoes.
Wait, did he also he changed his profile picture while we were roasting him about that too?
No,
way to go.
I hope not.
You bullied him. You bullied him into changing his profile picture.
Don't change your profile picture.
We have all the power now.
You know what? I'm sure this is probably a stupid thing to say, but the Black Bay 58 size spread, or the Black Bay size spread that they're doing, feels very NOMOS clubby to me.
Sure.
Like they were just like, great, we've got a hit in the NOMOS club.
Yeah.
Historically a smaller watch, we're going to just make a size for everybody.
Yeah.
And there are some clubs out there that are bizarrely large.
Yeah. Yes. They wear, and again, really long lugs. They wear a little flat, so they were even bigger than their dimensions.
All right. I think this is going to be maybe for some people the watch of the show, or in terms of watches that you might realistically go out and pick up. The Black Bay Pro now with the opaline dial.
Yeah.
Am I a little salty about this being a modern competitor for my 16570? No, it's okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is, again, it's like, it's different. Obviously, it is not the same watch, but I feel like if you've been curious about that piece, you're gonna be able to get one of these on a bracelet for a couple grand, at least less than what you'd get the Polar for.
For sure.
Gonna scratch a very similar itch. Yeah, what do you think about this watch?
I'm a little surprised that we didn't see. I mean, they brought it out on a nylon. They brought it out on. Is that a rubber or a leather? I think it's a leather.
That's a nylon and then a hybrid.
Yeah, okay. And then the 3-link. I'm surprised we didn't see it on the 5-link, just because why not? Why not give us that option if you're making them? Overall, it's fine. I want to give a huge shout out actually to a friend of ours, friend of Worn and Wound actually, Matt Ludvigsen. He is a graphic designer, and like a long time ago, he posted this watch, but with a red GMT hand. Looks almost identical to this watch. And he shared it again this morning. He's like, I didn't do it exactly, but I pretty much did. So it's a watch that I think a lot of people could have seen coming, and a lot of people were clamoring for. So good on them for doing that. Yeah. For me, I'll wait for the Black Bay 58 GMT to kind of get new color updates. The Pro for me wears a little bit too large. It's still, in my opinion, a little bit too thick. But overall, I think the styling is pretty cool. And I'm glad to see that, you know, if Rolex isn't going to make the Explorer 2 happen that often anymore, at least someone will.
Yeah. So. And again, I think a lot of folks would reflect on the current Rolex Explorer, the Polar that they sell, and I think they find the proportions very, very strange, like very large. And I think this just will probably be a lot more sort of proportional for a lot of people.
Just accessible.
Yeah, no, totally.
I just wish, and this is my one gripe with a lot of Tudors, is the space between the crown, the actual knurling on the crown, and then the case body, having that large crown tube kind of between there. Boy, does that drive me nuts. I was hoping that we started to see them with a lot of their more recent models. They were shrinking it and shrinking it and shrinking it. And then they just kind of stopped. Like, see how much of a gap there is there between the knurling and the actual case body? I don't know why that drives me nuts, but it absolutely does. So I was hoping to see that keep on shrinking. Maybe we'll see that in the future. But for now, it's a staple to stay.
Yeah, I mean, if you listen to the podcast, you have a lot of very strangely pointed opinions about things.
I am very detail focused, is what I like to tell people.
That's a really charitable way of looking at it. All right, let's take a look at. I don't know if this is the last novelty.
I think there's just one more.
Yeah, all right.
Which is one that we've already kind of touched on.
Yeah, so we've got the chronographs.
Yeah. 3 or 5-link. Have it your way.
So is there anything different about this other than they added the 5-link?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Just that they added the 5-link on there. At least, like, to be honest, I saw that it was available on the 5-link, and then I just kind of skipped it and moved on.
Yeah.
Because it's the Black Bay Chrono. We've seen new color iterations. We saw material iterations with that carbon fiber cycling version that they did. To me, it just kind of feels like a bit of a soft release that they put out there just to appease the people who are asking for it. But overall, great. I mean, this is an option out there for a lot of people. This is a really excellent watch. Great way to get a Breitling caliber on the cheap. So overall, just a cool watch for sure. But not the biggest splash.
One of the things I always look forward to with Tudor releases also is once these start hitting the stores, you see the secondhand prices on Tudor models really dip significantly.
Yeah.
So if you've been looking at getting maybe the original Black Bay Pro, or you've been looking at a Black Bay 58 a Black Bay 58 Blue, for example, I think, again, historically, when I've sort of watched those secondhand prices, they dip quite a bit.
Yeah.
And so it might be a good time for you to get into one, because I think Tudor watches are I think they're the kind of brand where, like, when the new one comes out, a lot of folks will want to trade up.
Yeah, they want to get
and sort of try the new thing.
Well, they're very good at small refinements. They actually listen to the enthusiast community really well. They take their feedback. They change their watches. They come out with interesting colors, but they don't flood the market with weird colors. They're very good at towing that line over and over and over again, and so it makes them a more kind of desirable company for a lot of people, and for good reason, I think, for sure.
Yeah.
The one interesting thing here too is, like, we didn't see so many rumors this year about what's going to happen with Rolex and with Tudor, and we talked about leaks at the very top of this with Rolex. We didn't see any leaks with Tudor here. And unfortunately, a lot of the rumors just didn't come true either. People speculating about the resurgence of the North Flag and, all of these other models. I guess the Rolex North Flag. But anyway, we saw a lot of these kind of weird speculative models come through kind of the enthusiast community, and none of them really happened. Instead, they gave us some chunky divers and some more refined pieces.
No Monte Carlo return, which I know a lot of people want. Do they still sell the Tudor Ranger?
They do, but I think they forget that they sell the Tudor. Again, we talk about these models that have just kind of faded into the catalog, and that is one that is a fantastic watch. I've seen it in the wild, I think maybe 3 times. But every time I do, I'm like, this is a fantastic everyday field watch. Why don't people like this more? I think it just needs a bit more oomph.
No, for sure.
Maybe a white dial.
Don't get too crazy. Cool. We could jump over to another brand. I don't know if any of the folks, if Kat has sort of pinged you from Geneva.
No, still waiting on Geneva to ping us.
All right. Well, if anybody from our team is watching us from Geneva, let us know. We want to talk to you live from the show floor.
We're waiting for you.
Cool. Yeah, we can just keep going through some of the new releases. Let's jump to IWC. It seems like this year the sort of biggest release for IWC were the Ingenieurs, some additional Ingenieur models.
That is the big one.
I'll be honest, again, haven't had a chance to really dig in super far into what has been released, but it's beginning to feel like there's just a ton of Ingenieur options. And I'm a little bit lost, just particularly on the releases from this year. So if you have a grasp on what is new, that would be great.
So, I actually went hands-on with all of these models here, including some other ones that, one we can't talk about yet, I don't think, because I haven't seen it pop up anywhere, which is interesting. But the Ingenieur has exploded this year. If you really boil it down, we have some new case materials and we have a new size, a 35 millimeter. Super cool. You're looking at the 42 millimeter in ceramic right now. This is my personal favorite. I put it up on my Instagram this morning, the worst wrist shot ever, because I had to shoot it in the boutique and a very tight window of time and all that kind of fun stuff. But full ceramic construction, black dial, not ceramic dial, black dial. But that is the one that really kind of stole the show for me because it wears really well, and IWC does finishing on ceramic incredibly well. And the cool thing too with this one being such a stealth watch, that all of the fine points of finishing are kind of hidden in the shadows of this watch, so you don't really get to appreciate it until you start to play in the light a little bit and let the reflection swap in there. Bigger story though is obviously we did steel, we did titanium, now we have ceramic, and we have gold. So the Ingenieur in gold, we have it in 40 and 35, which is the new size. Awesome weight in the hand. If you go to their homepage, they have a whole Ingenieur. Oh, here you go. There's the 40 at 46,600, a bit of a hefty price.
Nice.
And then if you scroll down a little further, you'll see the 35 right there. 37,000 bargain compared to the 40 millimeter. But just a fantastic weight in the hand, really warm, rich colors too. For me personally, I liked the gold construction with the black dial a little bit more than the gold on gold. Because it added a little bit of warmth to the overall look and feel of the watch, which was really cool. Added a bit more dimensionality too. But the biggest story obviously is 35 millimeters. A lot of people thought that the 40 millimeter was a little bit big, a little unwieldy, a little chunky, I guess, for most people. Because again, it has a bit of a flatter construction with those lugs really kind of curving to meet the bottom of the case rather than making the whole case curve itself. So you would have that first female end link, or the first male link there kind of stick out a little further than you'd want it to, and it doesn't really drape as much as you'd like. So on the new 35, personally, I think it wears a little closer to a 36, maybe even closer to a 37 because of just the heft of the design overall.
Okay.
But the new size is fantastic. Again, if you go over to right on my Instagram right now, the first photo I posted was a 35 in gold. Second was a 42 in ceramic. And I think it's shocking to see how well those drastically different case diameters wear on the wrist. It's a huge difference in case diameter, but they both look incredibly good on my gigantic wrist, I'll add too. So that's really the huge story here. And then one other thing too, we also have the Ingenieur perpetual calendar that we have in a really cool blue color. And again, it's just not, it's not overly busy, but it is a pretty busy design. And then on top of it too, you have just a little bit more heft overall, because obviously you have a more complicated movement. You have to make it thicker, yada, yada. So it really just kind of takes the Ingenieur and bumps it up a stop. If you go back to our podcast for like New Year predictions back, I think it was like January, we put that podcast out, maybe December. We talked about how we really wanted to see complications make their way to the Ingenieur. I think we called that a chronograph. And I could be talking completely out of my own butt here, but I'm pretty sure Kazan called a perpetual calendar in the Ingenieur as something that was really exciting, something he wanted to see. So it's just great to see the Engineers integrated bracelet start to get some Engineers calibers, which is kind of cool. Whoa.
Look at this, just live.
There you go. So yeah, so this is the 35 gold and black dial. Actually, no, sorry, this is the 40. This is the 40. I lied already. There's the 42 ceramic, which again, my personal call out favorite. There's that perpetual. You can just see like visually, man, that thing is, it's hefty. It's a hefty piece. And then you see the green there. The green obviously is a new color for them. That's one that a lot of people were really excited about. Overall, the gold indices on there weren't quite to my taste, but they're cool. And then here's the 35. So you got the 35 white dial, and then the next one is that gold on gold 35. Again, I have a 7.67 inch wrist. 35 millimeter watches should not look all right on me. They should look really tiny. I don't think it does. I think it allows that, in my opinion, standout bracelet to actually get a little bit more of the center stage of your wrist, which is good. And it allows it to just drape a little bit better as it's meant to be. So really, I say good on them for a 35. It's going to bring this to a wider audience. Hopefully they don't run into the same production issues that they ran into with the old 40 Ingenieur, where they were kind of slow to get them out to the public. Because obviously that hindered a lot of the excitement. People wanted to get these watches on wrist and they just couldn't. Yeah. So hopefully they've kind of ironed that out. But 35 and 40, I think, are great places to be. And then a 42 on top of it for those of us who are looking for a bolder statement.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I mean, could this be kind of a trend coming out of the show? Is that sort of, all right, we found the model that really resonates with the audience. Let's make it in every size, just so that we're sort of fitting, as many different sort of tastes and, preferences as humanly possible, like really chasing, by SKU rather than sort of trying to come out with different designs for different tastes.
It's definitely a bit of a refinement. Definitely the market kind of correcting a bit, but I think more than anything, it's these brands finally listening to the enthusiast audience. People talked about how the 40 wore a little bit too big for them and they wanted a smaller size. Now the really funny thing here too, I want to bring up is Tissot. Tissot launched the PRX in a 40. People said, hey, this is a little bit too big. We want a 38. So Tissot gave us a 36, 35. And they said, hey, this is the original dimension. This is what we originally launched that Tissot C-Star with. We're just going back to our roots. And people didn't want to give it a chance because they read the dimensions, said, this is too small for me. Yeah. But when you put it on, it wore a little bit better, closer to what people really wanted for it. And so now brands are coming out with 36 millimeter integrated bracelet watches, and they're not getting roasted for it. They're getting applause. So unfortunately, Tissot kind of took the beating leading the way for everyone else to make it okay to make that watch. But I'm glad to see it because, again, I think it really opens up these designs to a lot of people that otherwise don't necessarily want to wear that chunky integrated design.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, the Ingenieur came out, and I know it got a ton of love, and I've seen
and a lot of hate.
Yeah, but I think like they're, like Cat Shoulders, our very own Cat Shoulders owns one. I've seen several come through the office, and I think they've always seemed really nice. But I think we're kind of getting to the point where you can find what you're looking for if you've been sort of. If the Ingenieur has piqued your interest, but maybe the size wasn't right, we've got different sizes. If the colors weren't right, we've got different colors. I'm sure they're just going to only continue to expand upon this. If, an $11,700 watch is too poor for you, you can spend $20,000 or even $47,000. Yeah. So really whatever floats your boat, you know what I mean, is totally possible.
Yeah, for sure. And Steve called it out in our comment section here too. He finds the blue on that perpetual calendar just lovely. Yeah, I think that they're doing a great job with colors. It is interesting to see that green and gold color scheme, and for it to personally kind of fall a little flat because I think that overall that was one that they were really hoping was going to be their big hit. And I think honestly, if you look at the collection of Ingenieur now, it's actually the one that gets lost in the mix a little bit. Yeah. But overall, it's nice. It's a really nice touch. And I think a big year for Ingenieur. I actually had a couple people message me early. I was up at 4 a.m. this morning, going through all the Watches and Wonders coverage and working on stuff behind the scenes. And I had quite a few people message me this morning or DM me through Instagram saying that IWC won the show, won Watches and Wonders with the Ingenieur.
Wow.
So yeah, people making bold claims out there. Obviously, everyone wants to pick their winner. Maybe we do that at the end of this podcast here.
It sounds like we have a guest.
Whoa.
Let me just go to, this is where you're really getting a sense
we got a Zach Weiss calling in.
What? A Zach Weiss. What a treat. All right. So I'm going to go back to the view of just the two of us.
Zach is joining.
All right. So I'm going to invite Zach to this call. And let's just see how this works.
Full disclosure,
Devin, this would be a good time for you to vamp.
Well, he said his phone is dying, so we might also lose him halfway through. Otherwise, some other things that I do want to mention with IWC is that we know that their collaboration and partnership with F1 is growing. That is a big part of their brand. They are working very closely with the team the costume designers on the F1 movie. So we might see some pretty cool watches pop up. Just taking a guess out there. I can't confirm or deny, but I'm very excited to go see that movie starring Brad Pitt.
Cool.
So that is neat. And then, they have some other stuff kind of planned throughout the year too that really I think is going to catch a lot of people off guard.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. All right. I'm going to add Zach to this live stream. Oh, look at this. We have Zach live from, and I'm going to change your name so that you're not Cat Shoulders. You're Zach Weiss.
That's probably a good call. Zach, welcome to our live stream, the first Worn and Wound live.
Excellent. Thanks for having me. Bonjour from Geneva.
So if you ever wondered if the job of a watch journalist is tough, wonder no more.
This is, I just had my last meeting, so, you have to have a champagne. There's literally Veuve Clicquot bottles everywhere here right now, so it's like it's being forced upon me, really.
A hot tip, you can actually bring up to 5 of those back in a checked bag.
Oh, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is, oh, wait, wrong direction. This is so far all the bags I have just from today.
Nice.
I don't know if you can see that. Several totes already, so.
Yes. Okay. So you've had a couple meetings today, obviously. What would you like to share with us? What was the thing that really caught your eye? What is the thing that stood out to you from all of your meetings? The one thing, you get one thing and that's it.
Okay, well, this is literally the last thing I saw, and it's still on my mind, and it was quite surprising. Bulgari Serpente Eterna. So this is their new Serpente watch. Not a watch I thought I'd be talking about on Worn and Wound.
Sure.
And it's a new version of it that's like sleeker and more modern looking. And it has, it's a solid piece, whereas the last ones were sort of like elasticy. I was terrified to try and put the other ones on because of how they work. So I just wasn't sure if it worked. But this one, it kind of works like a clasp with like 2 hinges on it. So it's able to put on this watch. And let me tell you, when it's on your wrist, it's very, very cool. I mean, it's nuts. It's a piece of like super high-end jewelry. I do not know what it costs. I'm assuming 5 figures, but like it was just rad and like probably the most different thing I've seen today.
Yeah.
But I've seen some exceptional stuff. It just like literally thinking about it as I sat down here. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Again, if you've been wondering if Zach Weiss has lost touch with the Worn and Wound community,
if there's a place to lose touch, it's here, because I don't think I've held a watch that is like under $60,000. No, that's not true. We saw some Alpinas and stuff that were really cool, but a lot of extraordinarily high end, don't ask the price tag kind of things today.
Yeah.
So have you had a chance to go hands on with sort of the big hitters of the show, the Rolexes, the Tudors, etc. yet, or have you not had those meetings yet?
Tudor, Grand Seiko, yes. Rolex is tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the Tudors? You were once a Black Bay Pro owner. Did you get to see the Opaline? What did you think about it?
The Opaline is very nice. Everything they released this year was really cool. What stood out to me was probably the 58 red. It's just like an unexpected colorway, and just one of those things where on paper wouldn't like it, in person thought it was pretty cool. Plus just nice to see Master Chronometer make its way to the 58, T-Fit, just all that stuff. And the Pelagos Ultra, was super cool too. I mean, every time I try on like a larger Pelagos, I'm reminded that I really like those watches, and this one just had some slight aesthetic tweaks that, was a nice change of pace from the previous versions. And despite it being a large watch, it's so light, even on the bracelet. Probably, I don't know what the lightest 1,000-meter diver is, but I think this is probably a contender for that, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, everything was really nice. And then yeah, the Opaline is probably like the most just iterative thing we saw from them this year,
Sure.
but we're very well executed. The black surrounds look great. Blake, I know you're a fan of that look with your, Blake's a big Rolex collector, for everyone who doesn't know. And
well, collector and distributor.
But it's yeah. So yeah, that one was just it was very nice. Yeah, nothing was a letdown from there at all.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, don't worry about all the hate you're getting from me about being a hoity-toity now. We've got some comments in the chat. I put it up on the screen. Steve Fiallo, good friend of the brand, says he's sure you earned that drink. Yeah. Which don't be so sure, Steve. Don't be so sure. Do you want to, or either yourself or you could hand somebody else the phone? Do you want to walk the floor a little bit and show us what it looks like from there?
As much as I'd love to, I am currently alone, so I would have to leave all my stuff behind, which I can't do.
Okay.
But another time, maybe.
No, it's great. Anything else you wanted to sort of share from what you saw today that like really stood out to you?
Yeah.
Sure.
What about those Alpinas?
I had my. So how was Alpina?
Yeah.
Alpina was cool. A small selection from Alpina Frederic Constant this year. So they had the new 40mm Perpetual from FC. Very nice. Wears well. They like doubled the power reserve on that to in the 70s now, which is nice. And then from Alpina, they had an Extreme with just like a new dial. And then these two Heritage Collection Tropic Proof manual wound watches. So these look like they're plucked right out of maybe the late 50s or something, which I think is the idea. I mean, they're from the archives. 34mm. I don't know if I said that, but a very, very wearable size. Looked really good. I think 34 is going to make its way in. Is probably the new minimum size on things, but it is it is not as small as it sounds, and it wears pretty well. I did have a meeting with Longa today, kind of a big group meeting. The biggest group meeting I've ever had. They put as many people as they could in this room. And there were very few watches, so I didn't get to handle them yet, but they have new 34mm 1815s, which, 72 hours of power reserve, 6.6 millimeters thick, really, beautiful little watches. But we should get a chance to go hands-on with those, I think, tomorrow.
Cool. Cool. You posted a picture on our Instagram too, I guess a video of the minute repeater as well, right?
Yes. So I did get to see that one up close and personal. I mean, what can you say? It's a minute repeater Perpetual by, Longa. Absolutely beautiful. The dial on that's really beautiful. It's black enamel, like a 4-part dial. Has these beautiful little edges around it where you see these little metal lines that twinkle really nicely. The movement is gorgeous. Blasted finish on that, which apparently is harder to execute because it shows any kind of issue much. It's funny that they said that. They're like, yeah, the other, they have to be much more careful with these ones. It's so they're not going to, yeah, something like 765,000 euros around there on that watch. So
drop in the bucket.
Probably not going to see that again any day soon. But yeah, really beautiful. And I didn't get to see the honey gold Odyssey yet, but we should get to see it.
That's the one I'm really excited to see you post some pictures of. The warm hues on that, I assume are going to be amazing.
I did see it on somebody else's wrist, and it looked gorgeous. It was just high demand. So
yeah, well, that watch, even in steel, the value of that watch kind of doubled immediately because they're hard to get, and it's kind of the entry point that a lot of people are looking for. So I'm sure the honey gold will play over very well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for taking some time, Zach.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody appreciates getting to see live from the floor. We're definitely going to try to get one of your compatriots once you're not alone. I'm sorry you're alone. That's very sad. But
we're trying to meet up right now. I think Kat is on her way back because Anne got stuck in another meeting, but we're hoping to record a podcast momentarily. In fact, I see Kat now. Tel her to jump on.
Oh, sick. All right. Cool. Stay tuned because we're about to get Kat. All right. Thanks, Zach.
All right, awesome. Talk to you later.
See ya.
Bye.
Wow, I think that was a somewhat successful live stream from Watches and Wonders. That's pretty exciting.
Right there.
Pretty good call-in.
I saw MJ said, is Zach using the speakerphone? how many glasses of champagne are we at?
Well, honestly, I'm sure it's only the first glass of champagne, but I'm guessing they haven't eaten. If they have, it hasn't been very much, and they've probably had several cups of coffee. So
or like 30 espressos.
Yeah, it's probably the equivalent of several.
So much walking. Like you're walking a ton out there. So
it's conventions. I haven't been to Watches and Wonders, but going to Basel World, like it was always a lot of fun. But yeah, it is just like absolutely like exhausting.
It's grueling
when you're done, and you more often than not get sick when you get back and all that kind of stuff. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, we want to jump into, or we really weren't quite finished with the IWC conversation, so we can jump back into there if you want to.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, you know what? We should probably save a little bit of it for Kat, because I know Kat actually was at the IWC booth, so let's just save a small portion of that for her.
Yeah, we're both really excited to talk about TAG. So
okay, that sounded a little sarcastic, but I think we both are genuinely excited to talk about.
No, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
I'm very excited about these watches, the Formula Ones. I think. I just think they're so freaking cool.
They are.
I love them. I'm happy to see they're coming out with a bunch of different colors.
Yeah.
Not with Kith. Again, nothing
Thankfully.
against it, but I have no interest in buying a watch that has Kith on the dial necessarily, and I certainly don't.
Well, we both live in Brooklyn, but how many lines have you seen outside of the Kith store? Up in Manhattan that just like wrap around the building and they clog the whole sidewalk. Yeah. That makes me hate brands. Yeah. So when I see a co-branded dial, I'm out immediately. Yeah.
Do you think that the intention with Kith was now I can't get Kiss out of my brain. Was that like to call it Kiss, but Ronnie Feig just has a lisp?
Probably, yeah.
I don't know that I've ever heard him speak. But yeah, no, these are awesome. And, I would love to hear people's thoughts on the prices in the comments and whatnot, and I'd love to hear yours. Yeah. I kind of think just like it's so rare that a brand, like a brand of this sort of size or sort of like with the types of watches that they're typically releasing comes out with something like sub $2,000 that I think is so cool.
And so funky.
Yeah.
Like obviously a callback from past models. This is not like a groundbreaking design that we've never seen before. This is very familiar.
Totally.
But very cool, I think.
Yeah, I love this, like the red case.
Yeah.
I don't know I know some of these are limited.
Sure.
I'm not sure which ones are, but like talk about like watches that like put a smile on your face. Like,
can we talk about their website too? Did you notice that the dial immediately sets to the time it actually is in your time zone when you're on TAG Heuer's website? It's my favorite thing about their website. So if you go to any model, you'll see the hands scroll until they get to the time and date of where you are located.
That's really cool.
So dumb, but so awesome.
And shout out to whatever web dev team had to do that and deal with whatever horrible back and forth that required.
I actually didn't realize it until we're looking at it now, but we do have some that have geometric indices and we have some that have Arabic numerals.
Mm. I didn't notice that.
So that's kind of interesting. I didn't know that either before. I think... So, okay, we saw them. Obviously, they're now proudly back in the F1 game, which is really cool. It just kind of feels more of a heritage for them, whereas it feels a little bit more bought for others. We saw them release that giant Formula One race clock a little while ago that they actually put. I don't remember what Grand. It was Australia, maybe. I don't know. They put it at one of the races that they were doing, and when we saw that, I think the community kind of saw that and went, "Very cool. We're going to see this watch come back." And boy, did we! 38 millimeters. A bunch of funky colors, solar quartz movement, which I know, like we talked about the price a few seconds ago. That's going to be, I mean, we just got the first comment, $2,000 for solar quartz. Yeah. Like I get it. This is also solar quartz that is developed by Citizen Group. A lot of people don't talk about that, but that TH05 or 50 movement that's inside of there is a Citizen-derived solar quartz movement. And you can get that on some less expensive models, for sure. But I think here you are getting a little bit of an up-spec movement. You're getting better case finishing. To do hooded lugs is also really cool and funky to let the case just kind of shine a bit more. And this is a model. We talk about brand heritage. We talk about model heritage. This is a model that we used to see in movies and TV shows all throughout the 80s and 90s. We used to see this pop up all the time. And it's just cool to see it make a comeback and not get ruined. Because so often we see brands modernize designs like this. and they ruin them because it is funky. It's a weird watch, but it's a cool one for that reason.
Yeah. I threw a comment up on the screen from Sean Martin, who I think is kind of echoing, maybe in a slightly more polite way, what a lot of folks are saying in the comments, that like $2,000 is quite a bit for the watch. It seems like they maybe missed, the opportunity to potentially sort of like get the hype of like a moon swatch type situation. It does look like the cases are steel, not plastic, though. So, I think that's something to be commented on. I don't know if like the colorful cases are steel or plastic. I can go through, but yeah, either way, like just strictly on the design elements of this watch, like it just gets me excited. It's
they're
a
so
lot
fun.
of fun, and especially if this is the kind of thing that comes out and you can pick one up for even less on the secondhand market.
Sure.
I think that becomes like a very appealing. That becomes very appealing.
So this is something that I knew someone. So MJ just commented on there too. Can you talk about Tag using weird lug widths? 18.5 millimeters is different from one to another model that has 21.5 millimeters. Sure. That sucks. It is always weird when people use proprietary lugs and, or I guess oddly sized lugs and stuff like that. To be honest though, like with these watches, correct me if I'm wrong, but like this, you're going to be able to buy these straps secondhand or on the secondary market or even OEM here. It's going to be available out there for people. You see lug distance 18.5 millimeters. Tag does a pretty good job where if you contact an AD that they can source the straps for you.
Yeah.
I've seen that out there, which is kind of cool. But for me, these watches are meant to be worn on the OEM options that they come on. I think these bracelets fit the case beautifully. I think the rubber kind of plasticky looking straps fit the cases beautifully. These are ones that I don't think most people are really going to swap out. And with hooded lugs, it's really hard to fit a NATO inside of there or any kind of pass-through strap. So really, it's going to be hard to swap out anyways.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as a huge drawback, but I totally understand where people are coming from, not wanting to shove a 19 millimeter strap into an 18.5 millimeter lug width. It's a very good point and a point in contention, I'm sure, for some people.
Yeah, I will say, just to sort of play devil's advocate a little bit, if you do want to change the straps, it makes it exceedingly challenging. I guess the one benefit is that, if you're going to get a strap, you could probably buy an 18 and you won't really see the lugs.
Especially being
the
hooded.
lug bars,
Yeah.
they'll be hooded, so you won't really see the gap, but it still could shift around and sort of wear funky. And to your point, I think getting, aftermarket straps on there is going to be tough. Like maybe you could get a nylon strap on there depending on what kind of spacing they give you, but even still, sometimes they fit funny.
So tough.
My issue is that if you are going to want aftermarket straps and you do want to go, you want to get them directly from Tag Heuer, I'm sure they're going to be astronomically expensive. And I think that for a watch like this, you would kind of hope maybe it comes with a couple different straps or something like that. But yeah, I think that's like a totally fair point. The odd sizing is strange. And I guess, again, to drill down even further, why do it? Like, I can't imagine there was an engineering challenge that was so great they couldn't get past it without making the lugs 18.5.
Yeah, I mean, you can claim that it's structural, which is why you have that extra material on the outside. But I don't know. I don't know the old design dimensions all that well. Maybe I should have looked that up before this. But potentially that was true to the old sizing. I don't really know. But yeah, it seems like an easy tweak that they could have fixed, and one that they just didn't.
Yeah. Thelonious Monk, the fourth.
Beautiful name.
Yeah. I don't think you're actually. Maybe you are related to Thelonious Monk. If so, that's awesome.
Probably.
Yeah, I'll throw his comment up there. His glass box is 20.7 millimeter lugs, which is bizarre. And as a watch that you'd want to put on different kind of straps. In that case, at least you could get a 21 and probably make it fit well. But still, that's a little bit annoying.
Yeah. Ooh. Did you see Doug's question that just came through, asking if we'd rather get this Solargraph F1 or the Golf Racing F1 chronograph?
Interesting. That is a good question. I don't know what the answer to that would be.
For me, it's this Solargraph F1, but that's just, I think it's probably recency biased.
Yeah.
Like I love the Golf colors, but I'm very particular about them, and I only want them in certain places. My tactile turn pen, the Golf color iteration. Yeah, I wouldn't want to wear that in a watch too often, frankly.
Which watch was it? It's the
Golf Racing F1 chronograph.
Let's see how quickly I can find that. Or
Their
not find
website
it.
is a little tough.
All right, guys, we're gonna try to find this.
We could talk very quickly about the new Formula One watches that they brought out.
Is that what these are?
Yeah, that's for LVMH Watch Week. I dig them. I think they're super, super cool.
Interesting.
Titanium, chunky designs, really kind of bold redesigns on the watches. There you go. There's your Formula One. Yeah.
Wow. Quick answer for me. I would much rather have the Solargraph.
Yeah, horrible.
This is not to my personal taste, but
Golf on the Monaco? Absolutely. Golf on the F1? Not for me.
you're not catching me buying a Monaco. I'm not.
All right, then. I saw Ricardo did ask us, too, what we thought about the new Carreras, which we can switch over to those if you want to jump pages. Do you have any more thoughts on the Formula One Solargraph before we jump away?
Just that they're super cool.
Yeah.
I think we're probably going to try to get them in the office, if we can. And
You're going for the Christmas one, correct?
Look, it would the green and red would be hard to get away from. Like, it would
Yeah.
make me feel like it's Christmas all the time, which,
Sure.
I'm
Great song.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Christmas as it is, bah humbug. But honestly, I think I would probably end up going for, I don't know, maybe the green and the white. I think it would have to be this guy.
I weirdly might go for the yellow and black. I don't like yellow very much, but it's like it fits that watch so beautifully.
Yeah, I don't think that's weird at all.
Yeah.
And you could claim it's like a Wu-Tang limited edition.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
Which would be really sick. No, these are cool. I'm
super
all
fun.
about these.
Yeah. Cutting edge technology, according to their website here. But yeah, just a lot of fun, and one that it's funny because it's not a shocking release, right? Like, this isn't a surprise. This is one that I think we all saw coming, and we were just kind of waiting to happen. But I think we're all glad that they're here, which is cool.
Yeah.
And along with that, we did see some new Carreras. So we saw 3-hand Carreras and a Carrera GMT. The new 3-handers, they have that day-date complication. Obviously, the GMT has that split outer chapter ring. For me, these are fine.
They do feel, I mean, at 41, I think that's going to wear super big. Like,
yeah,
that's going to feel very large on your wrist.
These have a lot of dial presence, if I remember correctly. The standard Carrera models that they've had in the past, they just have like the dial just presents really large. I think in part because the indices in the hands feel a little bit on the slim side.
Yeah.
They feel a little dial heavy.
I would have loved to see something even thinner.
Sure.
12.6. I mean, I guess if this has the box crystal, then, which I don't know if it does.
Great strap and deployment, though. I will give them credit on that one for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think these are just, again, like to my personal taste, like maybe a little bit underwhelming.
Sure.
But, not even like a box
No, they're
crystal.
just a little thick. I have seen some interesting comments out there kind of comparing some of these movements to Breitling movements. Now, we've seen Breitling we just talked about Breitling doing a collaboration with other brands in the past, specifically Tudor. I don't know. I don't know if these are including Breitling movements. Couldn't tell you. Have no clue.
Yeah.
But interesting story. If so, I hope more brands share technology because it's just better for all of us. But this is really the interesting one right here, right? The dual time.
Yeah.
Sorry, twin time.
Do we, now that we've talked to Zach, TBD when Kat or someone else from the floor.
Kat's working on it right now.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Because we do have Griffin we want to bring in.
Correct.
And we're coming up on about an hour and 15 minutes of live stream, which is crazy. Time flies when
Holy
you're having
cow.
fun,
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
We've got so much to talk about, too.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, cool watch. 3-hand Carrera, twin time. I think the styling's pretty cool. I think the indices are a bit bold. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a really good option for people. I mean, this is what a lot of people who are traveling want. They want a dress watch with a GMT complication. They don't necessarily want the big chunky tool watch GMT.
Yeah.
So this is just a cool offering for those people looking for a travel watch that they can wear in the boardroom, especially if they're working with people overseas.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure they're lovely in person.
Yeah.
Interesting you get the GMT for the same thickness as the other. I mean, I guess they don't want to make two different case sizes, but yeah, the GMT definitely has a lot more like intrigue going on in terms of like the curved rehaunt and things like that.
Nice angles and facets on the case too.
Yeah. But no, I think, again, not to my taste, but I think more interesting, piques my interest more maybe than other like sort of simpler Carrera
For sure.
models for sure.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, no, that looks really cool. Do we want to jump over to Cartier?
Sure. Now you're going to have to lead this one a little bit because I'll be honest, I didn't dive into Cartier too much this morning. And I know it was the first watch that you brought up when I saw you when I walked in the office.
Yeah, well, hold on to your butts because the Cartier website is a fever dream, as I described it before.
Yeah.
So I really want to start from the beginning. See, we're trapped in this vortex of Cartier on their website. This
Look
is really,
at that gorgeous watch.
It's an experience for sure. Yeah. So let's enter Watches and Wonders. I'm sure this is what their booth looks like.
Kat's going to show us this exact walkthrough. So.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, yeah. I mean, I'll just jump to
hey.
We got a caller coming in.
Speaking.
I am going to. Devin, great time for you to vamp once again.
Vamp, and you landed on the website that I said you're going to have to take the lead. I will call out, just looking at the comments very quickly here, obviously we saw a lot of people talking about the Tag Heuer F1s, different configurations. Yeah, there's a ton of them. Chris, you asked about the Oris Big Crown. Not talked about Oris yet, but we have that on the docket. Hopefully we can get to that towards the end here because it's one that I am personally very excited to talk about. I actually wore my Oris Big Crown date pointer date, BCPD. In the office today just for that exact reason. So I'm very excited to talk about that. Looking back on here, there's a lot of fun comments just talking about 34 millimeters, which is interesting. People talking about different case sizes. Sean brought up that Christopher Ward took the 12 and did the 36, the 38, and the 40, plus 41 for the 12X. So again, just following in that trend of a size for everybody out there. And nobody's complaining that the 36 is too small, and no one's complaining that the 41 is too big because they have other ones that they can look at. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, you talked about the 35 PRX and said it's a bit too small. Sean, you're a giant. You shouldn't be wearing a 30. Well, wear what you want, but like, man, a 35 millimeter on you, you're gonna dwarf that thing. Although honestly, I think I remember your wrists being a little bit smaller than mine, so you might be able to pull that off more than you think.
All right, we got Kat. Pardon my awkwardness getting her in here.
Wait,
I'm going to change your name. Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, we can hear you, and we can see the Tudor booth.
Okay, cool. It's not on my face because I'm currently walking out of the building, but
Sure.
I thought I could talk and show you guys what the floor looks like as I'm
that'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
super cool.
Let me see if I can get you on the big screen for our viewers.
Obviously, a lot less busy now than it was about 7 hours ago.
Yeah. All right, so we've got a live
it's actually
view.
still pretty busy. All right.
Sorry, Kat. Just going to give everybody over. So we've got Kat live from Watches and Wonders, getting a live view of the Watches and Wonders hall. Again, Wi-Fi permitting. We're going to continue this live stream open.
Yeah.
Kat, you should show us whatever you want to show us, but also if you're watching along and you want to get anything in particular, let us know and we can ask Kat politely to walk us over there.
Yeah. Or I could come back tomorrow to specific booths. So we've got Chauffard.
Wow. That's a visual display.
Over here. And this is sort of the great, yeah, they go big. And yeah, this is like the great hall. So this is like the biggest open space. It's kind of where everyone has to go through to get to any of the different corridors that are here with all the brands. And we've got Rolex right here.
Oh yeah,
we got a really cool booth.
Feels like Basel World did. I feel like they took some of those design elements or maybe even like the literal components from their Basel World booth and brought them to Geneva.
And Patek over here, they look like an Apple store in my opinion.
100% Apple store right there.
So these are all the old Basel booths. That's how their booth always was. It's really I don't know how you feel about it, Kat. I always thought it was really beautiful in person. Like it gives off this really nice soft
beautiful.
light.
Sure, it looks like a Bauhaus
yeah.
lamp.
But it does look very like Apple Store like in my opinion. But as you mentioned, Blake, something I've noticed just coming to Watches and Wonders over like the last 3 years is that a lot of the brands reuse the same. Like so Rolex never changes, Tudor never changes. It's the same. Now Tag right here.
Yeah, take us into Tag. So excited to see this.
Yeah. So we've got some F1 vehicles. I think they're F1. I don't watch racing,
coolest
so I don't know.
cigarette advertising you will ever see.
Makes you want to smoke.
Yeah. Oh, so cool.
Yeah. We got the Oracle. Are these F1 cars?
Yes.
Old and new,
They look like F1 cars. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Tag's very different. They've got a new spot this year, and they're super into racing.
Can you get a shot of any of the watches like displayed outside or like in windows or anything like that?
They don't have any. Oh, sorry. They don't have any displayed out here in this display. But we have an appointment tomorrow, and I can call in while I'm in there.
Very cool. Can you just get in an F1 car?
I'm also like on my way out. So I'm trying to make my shuttle out, so like I can't stay too long.
That's okay. We appreciate the time.
Yeah.
We've got Bulgari over here.
Beautiful. Gorgeous hotel entrance foyer.
Big Hublot space. Got some techno music playing and this big party over here.
Yeah, I think we would expect nothing less from Hublot.
Heck yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's like something smoking, so I don't know what's happening over here.
Intentional? We don't know.
Yeah. But as we keep walking, it's getting more and more crowded, busier on this side of the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's super cool.
Oh.
Sounds like we might be losing Kat.
Yeah. Good old Geneva Wi-Fi.
Yeah. Streets paved in gold and chocolate, but they can't they can't nail down their Wi-Fi. Kat, if you can hear us, we're gonna jump. We're gonna we'll pick up with you guys tomorrow, and I think we're gonna get Griffin on the show.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for showing us around a little bit.
Okay.
And yeah, we'll definitely want to check in with you guys tomorrow if possible.
Cool.
Well, I guess we don't technically have a live stream plan. All right, see you later, Kat. Bye.
We might now.
Bye, guys.
See ya. That was awesome. That
we don't
F1,
technically have a live stream plan for tomorrow, but maybe it's going to be a necessity.
It might happen. That tag booth is awesome.
Yeah, no, the tag booth is really cool. Doug asks, is that a watch booth or a rave? Hard to tell. You never really know at these things. Maybe it's a watch booth by day, rave by night.
Depends on how many glasses of champagne they've handed out.
Yeah. Exactly. Cool. Well, yeah, let's try to work on getting Griffin on so we can get his take.
Why don't we go ahead and jump into Cartier? I will ping Griffin and see if we can get him on here, and we'll kind of work our way that way.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I think just for me personally, you know, what Cartier released that really got me the most excited was I'm going to mess up the names, / the name is hidden.
I would like you to try to pronounce it as best you possibly can.
It would be the Tank Agichits. I think it's the Tank Agichits is what it's called.
That's exactly what it is. Tank Agichits. Yeah.
I'm not gonna even try. But these tanks with the small cutouts for the time is just like, this is it for me. Like, this is the watch to see.
Wouldn't you know it? We have another caller.
Hot dog. All right, guys. Again,
this must be what it's like to run a radio show. This is phenomenal.
I'm beginning to understand why people have actual producers and not just like part-time idiots
scheduled times for call.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's sort of, you know, it makes sense that you'd be a little bit more planned.
Hey, that's fine. While you're getting Griffin up, I did see that Peter asked us if we've done any Panerai. We have not talked about Panerai yet at all. Surprisingly or unsurprisingly, Panerai has not really gotten much coverage from anybody that I've seen out there.
No.
Yeah.
All right, we got Griffin. Griffin, can you hear us? Can we hear you?
I'm here. I can hear you guys.
Cool. Griffin Bartsch, contributor to Worn and Wound, watch aficionado, man about town, pinky ring wearer, just so many different accolades. We were just digging into Cartier, but I guess before we get into Cartier, is there anything from the show that you really had a hot take on? So far, we've been through Rolex, Tudor, IWC, and Tag. Anything you really wanted to dig in on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always interesting talking about Tudor. I've been obviously talking to a lot of friends and other collectors today, and I don't totally get this, but the broad perception seems to be kind of like every year that they didn't really do enough. It seems to me like they actually did a lot, but it also seems to me, I think one thing we kind of haven't been thinking about is that next year is what Tudor claims to be their 100th anniversary. And I think they set the stage really nicely for themselves for next year. You know, I think there's some weirdness. I think introducing a 43 millimeter Pelagos with the 42 millimeter, like leaves the 42 millimeter classic Pelagos in a weird place.
Sure.
Especially because they've got the 39, the FXD, the standard FXD is 42 millimeters. I think we could see a new standard Pelagos coming more in line with the 39 and Ultra sometime next year.
Sure. Well, I guess that is interesting to think about too, because the Pelagos is not a model. We talked about this being an iterative year, but the Pelagos is not a model that they've really iterated on a whole lot. We have the traditional and the P39, now the Ultra, and the LHD and FXDs, obviously, but we don't really see color iterations. We don't really see the small tweaks. They tend to just make a new model family.
Yeah, and that was one of the requests that we did see in the comments. Was like I was really hoping for a new Pelagos color.
Yeah.
Do they keep the Pelagos FXDs on a different page of their site? Because
they do. Yeah, it's
they do now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they used to.
No, I think originally
I think
they used to put them right up there, but now they kind of separate them out a little bit.
Interesting.
Actually, it was up there in the Pelagos section.
It is. Okay. Yeah, we're just on the Pelagos site trying to pull up what you guys are talking about. I mean, we were talking a lot about sort of like the size sort of spread, Griffin, and how it seems like Tudor's really trying to have something for everybody. We were commenting, like, we're both sort of bigger guys. We have larger wrists. I think Devin sort of shared on the podcast that he prefers like a slightly larger watch. You yourself have a bigger wrist. Like, does the Pelagos Ultra like pique your interest? Is that something that you've been looking for?
It's not what I've been expressly looking for. I mean, in terms of everyday sports watches, the standard Pelagos is far more ultra than I'm ever going to actually need.
Sure.
Frankly, even the Pelagos 39, which a lot of people kind of think of as a watered down Pelagos, is more than I'm ever going to need on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
But I think there's something really compelling here. I think, especially like I see just anecdotally the popularity of the bigger Rolex dive watches, like the Sea Dwellers and the deep seas and stuff. I think when these are available, these are going to be a watch you're going to see a lot of.
Sure. It's a statement piece for sure.
Yeah.
One link too big so it jangles out of the cuff sleeve.
Oh, 100%. Which begs the question, why even bother adding T-Fit?
Sure.
The idea that they added T-Fit, though, and still managed to maintain the spring-loaded clasp is really cool to me.
Yeah, such a cool addition. And a little bit of teal, too.
Yeah. Do you find it a little surprising that spring-loaded clasp hasn't found its way to other models, especially since you can now do a T-Fit with a spring-loaded clasp? I remember that being a comment when the first Pelagos came out. When I had it, I think people forgot that feature was there, and they'd see it and they'd be like, oh, that's so cool. Like, why don't they put that on anything else? I wonder if that'll find its way to any other models.
I mean, I would hope that if they do like a new version of the standard issue Pelagos, that it would find its way into that. I think it's probably, I mean, we're talking, small orders of magnitude, but it's probably a fairly expensive feature to add to the bracelet, and probably does drive up the cost of the bracelet pretty dramatically, which might be part of why this new watch is $1,000 more than a 39.
Yeah. I have seen divers complain too that the spring-loaded mechanism did get gummed up on the occasion, really, really rare occasions that they would gum it up with sand or seaweed debris or whatever. So maybe, I mean, as with Tudor, it's a fail-safe watch, so you've got T-Fit and spring load, and the dive extension. So no matter what, you're going to make this thing fit.
It's going to look. A lot of people are just going to wear it on the rubber, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So we were gonna, speaking of dive watches, we were gonna dive into Cartier when you called in.
Sounds
do
good.
you have any like interesting takes on Cartier? I'm really enamored with the. Do you know how to pronounce the watch with the cutouts on the
I believe it's Tenka Guichet.
Okay. Wow. So cultured you are. For me, that was I'm in love with that watch. I think it's really beautiful and just like such a cool design. I'm happy they brought it back.
I think every year we see the Privé Collection Cartier stuff, and every year I love the Privé Collection Cartier stuff, and this is no exception. They really brought it back to the kind of normal case is also a really great differentiator from some of the other revivals they've done of it over the years. And I really am intrigued by the special edition one with the kind of askew cutouts. I guess it's kind of a driver's watch version of it.
Yeah, it's interesting the way those
Yeah.
cutouts are on the dial. It almost I'd love to see what they, because those are not the natural placement of the date window or like those are askew in a strange way.
Yeah.
So they're not just the regular movement turned on its side, turned a bit. Like they had to probably do some engineering to get that hour
Yeah, for sure.
poking out that way.
But I think too, I mean, if you want to call it a driver's style, it's skewed in the opposite direction that we're used to seeing a dial surface skewed. So I mean, this is like a right-wristed driver's dial.
I mean, I guess. Although I suppose with the shape of the watch, what's to stop you from just inverting it on your own wrist?
Sure.
With the crown at 12 o'clock.
Or the underside.
Yeah.
It is interesting. Actually, if you want to read that straight on, you kind of have to hold your arm straight out. Which makes it kind of difficult to get it back into frame for you.
But these are fantastic. I think it's interesting. It seems to be a pretty big year for the jump hour as well.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. I also didn't notice at first that the crown is at 12 o'clock, which I think is like a really nice feature. Anything else from Cartier really stick out to you, or
the new, I think I'll be really curious to see the automatic Louis Cartiers that are a little bit bigger than we're used to from the Tank Louis, and have a new dial style that looks really cool. And as always, I'm in love with every single version of the Santos Dumont that has ever been produced.
Sure.
And the new ones, which I don't think they're necessarily highlighting as their top flight releases, but are also great as they always are.
Yeah.
What a dial.
Yeah. I was explaining before that the Cartier website is what I'm describing as a fever dream. It's very very challenging to navigate. Beautiful, but very challenging to navigate. So I'm trying to find...
if we can go... Ooh, yeah. That's the one. That's the one. I was just dunking on green and gold not really being my thing. It is on this watch.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Interesting. What is it about? And I guess green and gold is having, there's new Rolexes with green and gold. There's new IWCs. It's interesting. That feels like a pretty classic palette to me.
Yeah. I just don't like
Especially
anything
for watches.
popular. So if it has a moment.
Oh, right. That's why you're a Cleveland fan.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. I like self-loathing. So I'm here to just fight everyone's opinion, except on this one. I think this looks right. This looks correct. Even the Little Papa Blue is beautiful on this watch. I'm glad that they show you so many pictures of it.
I was going to say, there's one hero shot of it, and then it's very difficult to find anything else. But no, I like these quite a bit.
Yeah. The Bell and Blue too. It's a watch you don't see a whole lot in the wild, and when you do, does it just suck your eye. And I ran into a woman wearing it in the Cartier boutique in Soho, and had to stop. She was trying on bracelets, and I stopped her and ran up to her. And I was like, "Hey, can I just take a few photos?" She said no,
and then called the police.
It was a bit of an awkward moment, but it's just a watch you don't see a whole lot of, and it's a Cartier that I think is underappreciated. So it's really cool to see them giving it a little bit of love.
Yeah, for sure. Any other brands stick out to you? We've got a bunch we haven't talked about. We haven't talked about JLC. We haven't talked about Oris. There was a request to talk about the new Orises. Any brands that stick out to you that you want to dig into?
Well, I think Oris did a great job. I think Oris has, over the last few years, been slowly, I don't want to say chipping away at their collection, but they've kind of been working their way through their collection and making everything just a little bit more wearable, a little bit more universal. And I think they did that really well with the new Big Crown pointer dates, which, Devin, I know you're a big fan of.
Huge fan. Yeah. Some insider knowledge. Obviously, I'm wearing one right now. My younger brother got married this past weekend, and I gifted him the 36 millimeter pointer date because, again, it's just a model family that I think is it needs some more love out there. But it's one that when you get it on wrist and you get it in hand, it's a romantic piece. I think these new ones are a little bit more modernized. One thing that I'll call out that I do not like is that the date pointer arrow hand is now a little bit more on the monochromatic side, whereas I like the bold red crescent moon on the model. But I think that'll be more appealing to more people. I
love the color match
Right.
on that. I think it's just like really beautiful. Yeah, I agree, Griffin. I think that they did a really great job sort of updating these, and I think that they're really beautiful. I think I haven't been able to see one in person, but I'm excited to.
Well, if you want to see more, I did just get a hot tip that we actually have these live on the Wind Up Watch Shop page with live studio photos from our photographer, Garrett Jones. So if you want to see our own in-studio photography, check those out. And then at some point, we'll be doing a shop video on these too, because I was not in the office when these came to the office. And when I came back, they had already left. So I haven't had hands on with them yet. But I am chomping at the bit to get these on wrist because I really, really love these new models.
I also approved those photos yesterday, so probably should have remembered that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that they came out with sort of two new iterations of the Big Crown. So they've got this new 40 millimeter, which presumably is going to replace sort of the old design. Yeah. It's nice to see them releasing a new watch at a more approachable price point. It's been doing a lot of the caliber.
Yeah.
Is the caliber 50?
The in-house caliber. You're talking about like there's a 401, there's
caliber
the 403,
400s,
there's the 400s.
Excuse me. Like it's nice to see, although Oris prices have sort of creeped up over the years, to see this coming in at 2300, getting the pointer date complication maybe like feels a little bit more special
with an updated bracelet, completely new, redesigned, kind of modern design language. I think that this, for me personally, this is a great color palette too. Yeah. These are home runs from Oris.
I love the yellow. The colors they chose for these are so great. They've been using color lately, and I think some of the other colorful watches they've come out with maybe have been a little bit washed out for me, like the color tones. But these are super punchy and really beautiful.
Yeah. I hope we don't completely lose the cathedral hands. That is one thing from the older models that was kind of like a romantic call out for me. Yeah. Again, these are more of a modern take, butterfly clasp and bracelet and all that kind of fun stuff. So definitely more on the more modern conventional side. But the cathedral hands are still one of the points that draw me to this model family.
So we're gonna have there's the Big Crown pointer date. Sorry, Griffin, just to sort of set the table here. So we've got the Big Crown pointer date, which comes in at 2300 and has the typical pointer date function with the central seconds. Then there's the Big Crown pointer date caliber 403, which does have an in-house movement in it and comes in some other really beautiful colors, which has same pointer date but sub-seconds. And then there's the Big Crown diamonds and the Big Crown, both of which are at 34. One has diamonds, one doesn't.
Skeletonized hands.
Skeletonized hands, which is really cool.
And then it's just the Big Crown too, so there's no date on that model.
Correct. Yeah. Which again I think makes a lot of sense. And
the OP competitor, or I guess affordable OP.
Yeah. But again, like those hands, those skeletonized hands are really beautiful. Like the sort of like, cool. I don't know what style the minute hand is sort of sword style, but the hour hand is almost like it's like a broadsword. It's I like the sharpened pencil. That's a pretty fun name for me. But I guess they have a bit of a pinched base to kind of like lighten them up a little bit, which is cool. Yeah. Sorry, Griffin, I sort of walked over you a little bit there.
Yeah, no, but I mean, Devin, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like these are, without feeling like an OP clone, feel very much like a really strong alternative. I mean, for $2,300, the yellow Big Crown pointer date really would do, for a lot of people, would scratch the itch of a yellow dialed OP.
Yeah.
These are really well positioned. The bracelets are really modern and look great and match the watch as well.
They do.
And the fact that they haven't gotten rid of the cathedral hand ones, those are still there in the collection. They're still on the site.
Yeah. It's also nice to see, and I believe with the previous iteration with the cathedral hands, those are printed dials. They don't have applied numerals the way the new versions do.
Sure.
I don't think, but it's nice to see them bringing that to that model. I think it sort of like levels up the design a little bit.
It definitely does. Again, modernizes it, which is cool. Do they have a loom shot of the new, or maybe we might have one in the shop. I'm not entirely sure.
I'm sure they do.
See if they
they do.
Okay, cool. I want to see. I actually haven't seen a loom shot of these.
Okay, so interestingly, the second hand and the date hand aren't loomed, but I have no issue with that.
No. That's totally fine. You don't need to know the date in the middle of the night. That's fine. I will say too, the one color that I don't see popping up on Oris's website, but I do see in the Wind Up Watch Shop is this like pastel green. or like field green color.
So that's going to be in the 403.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're looking at the standard. That's right. Okay.
So the 403, so the standard's going to come in what they're calling blue, and then navy, which is a navy blue, and the yellow.
A little bit of a purple hue on that one too.
Yeah,
Super
and then the 403 comes in this sort of pale green, but then also I'm trying to see what color they call this.
It's like salmon-y color.
But like a salmon pink, which is like
terracotta.
Terracotta. Yeah, that's beautiful.
It is really good. And I'm going to, not to shill our own shop, but like highly recommend you go check them out, live pictures on our site, because as we see a lot of the times with these renderings, the colors appear very different. I think they're always a little bit punchier in the renderings than you necessarily get. The saturation gets turned up, whereas you see them kind of in the real world in live photography. And I think I actually heavily prefer them in the real world live photography. I think they look fantastic.
And if you really want to see them in the real world, I'm sure they'll be bringing them to wind up San Francisco in like a month.
That is true. Yeah.
No, for sure. They'll definitely.
These are awesome. I know. I was begging them in Dallas. I'm like, do you guys have these here? Because I didn't see them in the office. And VJ just smiled and he's like, no chance, buddy. No chance.
No, these are, I think these are going to be big hits for them.
Yeah, they're so good.
It's going to revive this line of watches for sure.
Yeah. That yellow is great too. It reminds me a lot of kind of the vintage vibe that we got from the Roberto Clemente limited edition that they did. It kind of brings that vintage charm to it, and the shadow that gets cast off those block indices just gives the dial a little bit more richness and depth. And I don't know, I'm a huge fan. I love these new releases.
I shouldn't be paying such close attention to my watch when I'm driving, but there's like a particular experience when you're sort of driving home at the end of the day and the sun is setting, if you happen to be leaving before it's dark. There's like a particular shot of looking at my wrist with my hand on the wheel with that sort of like really great lighting. It's like a particular moment in time, because you get that, you get all those shadows, and I'm wearing my Omega Speedmaster in white, and you see the depth of the sundials or the subdials so clearly there, and I feel like this is a watch that'll look really great in those kinds of settings.
The crystal is always very well executed on these watches. That is my favorite thing about my personal one. I have the old Hesalite, box crystal on there, and it just, again, adds a little bit of charm. They've kind of shrunken the dome down on these new models, so it's not so pronounced like mine. Mine has scratches on all of the edges of it because it bangs into every door corner. These have been refined a little bit further, which I think, again, is just good for the modern audience, but you still get that that vintage shadow and slight bit of distortion at the edges of this crystal, which just they make it so beautiful. I can't give them enough props on this one.
Yeah, and then I have pulled up on the screen here the Big Crown diamonds, which, again, like diamonds on dials, there's never really, it's not my personal thing.
They're forever.
Diamonds are forever. But I really kind of love this execution. Just really simple
hands, right?
baguettes. Yeah, I mean, the hands are great.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of how they place the diamonds on the dial and what diamond cut they used, it's just I don't know, it really kind of, I'm sure it doesn't in person, but in the photographs, it kind of blends in really seamlessly. And, I think if you're looking for a smaller size watch that sort of has, is jewel set in some way, this is a really tasteful way of doing it. So, I dig those quite a bit.
And again, it's $3,200, which is, again, Oris just continues to really offer an amazing value.
Yeah.
No, it's a very fair
at every
price.
Level. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually really love on this model too how big the crown is. I mean, obviously it's a big crown model, but proportionally it looks really cool.
Yeah.
I can just picture this on a woman's wrist and looking just fantastic. Looking at that right blend of tool but sophisticated. Really, really cool piece.
Yeah. No, that's super cool. Yeah. No, I think Oris did a really great job without doing too much. They did. They did a really great job. Yeah. So we haven't really gotten to JLC. Do we want to jump over to JLC and talk about them for a little while?
I would love to.
Sweet.
Please.
All right. Well, you guys drive because you both seem pretty excited about JLC. What do you guys want to talk about?
Griffin, you can go first because I'm going to wax poetic about one reference very specifically. So go ahead and kick us off here.
Well, I have two references that I would want to wax poetic about. So I'm assuming, is yours the Milanese bracelet?
It is.
Yeah. So for me, I think the other, that's clearly the standout is the Milanese bracelet.
Yeah.
Reverso. But on the other hand, I also continue to love highly complicated reversos. And a minute repeater reverso, especially, is just, it's so cool. I mean, it's ridiculous and unnecessary and far beyond anything I will ever consider in my life. And it makes me so happy that it's out there.
Yeah. Striking dial.
Striking dial that it's, and I love this thing JLC does where they pair a really classic traditional reverso dial with something completely unhinged.
Yeah.
But what oftentimes they feel disconnected, and this time they feel of a piece in a way that kind of caught me by surprise.
Yeah.
Like that it's still the same indices shape and the same hand shape and the same touches of blue and rose gold, but completely skeletonized with a visible minute repeater, and highly limited and ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously this was a reverso year for JLC.
Yeah, I mean, they made that very clear that this was their polo year, that they were going to really hammer home the reverso, which I think is interesting because we saw a whole bunch of like innovative models last year with like the duometer in particular. And this year they kind of went back to their classic roots. You pulled up, like, are you kidding me? The live stream is looking at this right now. The reverso tribute monophase small seconds in that kind of rose pink gold, beautiful Milanese mesh bracelet. Still super thin. It's 7.56 millimeters thick. It is a very thin case. The monophase is a watch that I really love because it just wears so tight to the wrist too. But the drape that they're getting now with this Milanese bracelet and the way that it kind of just falls onto the wrist, this thing is going to wear like a dream.
Yeah.
It is beautifully finished. Such a tight Milanese pattern too. So you're most likely not going to see it pull any hairs. You're not going to see it kind of rub the edges of your wrist raw, which you might get on some cheaper Milanese. This is beautiful. And this is the watch I was talking about when we were talking about the 1908 bracelet, about how this was kind of the year of the bracelet for me.
Yeah.
Holy moly, that's a beautiful one.
Yeah, I mean, I guess for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with the reverso line, I mean, I've heard a lot of people talking about Milanese, and obviously I know what it is and I can appreciate what it provides to the watch, but like people are really freaking out about this bracelet. Yeah. Is it just the wearability, just like the draping over your wrist? Because I did see on Instagram some shots of it doing that, and it does look really great.
Yeah. So traditionally with the reverso, it does have this tendency to kind of hold the strap, whatever you have it on, kind of up a little bit off of your wrist. So it kind of extends the case a little bit longer than you might want, which is why people tend to go for smaller case diameters in the reverso. The smaller reversos tend to be a bit more popular because of that. Because of the drape that you're getting in this Milanese here, it really just encompasses the wrist. It falls on it, and it just holds it tightly. It's this nice heavy gold too, so it's going to have wrist presence without really having an issue sliding underneath the cuff. And imagine just like the tiniest bit of that Milanese peeking out from underneath like a white dress shirt. That's going to steal everyone's attention. It's so beautiful. And then you mix in there too this grain pattern dial, the small seconds, the monophase, so that way you can flip it over and let it be a true original reverso styling rather than doing a skeleton or a more complicated version in order to keep that thickness down. Just overall really cool, really well executed. And we talked about people wanting those old vintage pieces in particular. What a lot of people are looking for in those old vintage pieces are those old vintage bracelets, because these are so incredibly hard to execute. That's why most companies just don't try to machine them anymore. But here's JLC going, hey, we see what you like. We know what you want. Everyone says it's too hard. We're going to do it on our most popular model in the most incredible way.
Yeah. And Steve points out also that it looks like it flows into the case really beautifully, which a lot of times mesh doesn't. I think that's definitely the case. Should we inquire by phone?
I think
real quick.
So
we could.
It's also tapered, which is just I mean, it's very doable in mesh bracelets. Like you see it in cheap mesh bracelets, but it is hard to do, and it's something that you often see just ignored and be like, we'll just make it one width the whole way. And this pinches just enough that it has that look where it, and the Milanese is tight. It almost looks like a ribbed like fabric strap.
Yeah.
No, it's beautiful. It's really great.
I know this is dumb to say.
White gold and yellow gold in the next couple years.
Yeah. Well, but like also 41,300. Obviously, huge price point. I'm not going to sit here and claim that I can go out and buy one of these right now because there's no chance. But when you consider what you're getting here for the price, I actually think I hate that I'm going to say this, but I think that this is actually a better value than people think it is too. When you compare it to other gold pieces that JLC puts out there, the complication of this watch and bracelet really, I thought, was going to drive that price point even further. But you can get, like a duo face tribute small seconds on a gold bracelet for right around 36. Now that's obviously a smaller case. It is a duo face, which is a more complicated watch technically. But yeah, I really thought this bracelet was going to drive the price up by like another like 8 to 10K. And to see that it didn't do that, I think is really cool.
Yeah, no, that's cool. So we're scheduled to go until 1, so we have about 10 minutes left. Is there anything you guys want to talk about that we didn't get a chance to talk about? Or is there... Somebody just put into the chat, very nice Borat voice. I'll throw that in there just because we can. But
have you guys talked about the new NOMOS?
No, that's a very good
let's
call.
do that.
Yeah, let me pull them up.
There's actually 2 new NOMOS, one that I think a lot of people forgot about. Griffin, go ahead and give us your take on the. Which one do you want to start with? Do you have a preference?
Well, I think just to get it out of the way, I think the Minimatic 39 date with the gold hands and surrounds, like that's just a great looking, very Nomos-y watch.
Yeah.
But that it kind of has the Corne de Vache E lugs. It's just a beautiful watch that makes sense in Nomos's collection.
Sure.
Yeah.
Minimatic not so mini anymore.
No. But I think obviously what people are going to be talking about and interested in is the Club Sport Neomatic World Timer. Which,
sure.
like every Nomos has like one too many words in the name.
Can we real quick sticking on the Neomatic that they released?
The Minimatic.
The Minimatic, excuse me.
Minimatic.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but this doesn't have an automatic. It's a hand wound
Manually wound. Yep.
As I think Zach Weiss has pointed out in the office, this is confusing.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that it would have been cool if maybe it was a different name, but
like the Mini Manual.
Yeah, maybe.
Or Maxi Manual.
Yeah. The Manly Manual.
It is interesting too, though. Can you show the movement very quickly?
Yeah. It's beautiful.
Gorgeous finishing, but that is a very large movement holder. That's obviously, they very much could have shrunken the diameter down, but they chose to extend it in order to just kind of fit the preferences of the world out there, which is nice.
Yeah.
But it does kind of.
This is something.
Oh, go ahead, Griffin.
This is something we see Nomos do so that they can then do the flexibility in the case sizes.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a beautiful watch, and I think it's another. Nomos has always been the brand that when I'm talking to people about watches, and they don't quite get it, or they're just like, "That's silly." Then I show them Nomos and they get really excited. Like there's something about I think like the simplicity and sort of like universal appeal. Like it's really just kind of, it's Bauhaus, but it's different. And
it's a pleasing watch. It's a very like designer watch, which is cool.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
This definitely feels like one of those watches that'll slot into that kind of like show it to your friends who aren't really into watches and who need a watch for work that's different but interesting.
Yeah.
So let's jump into the World Timer. Because I feel like we might have some strong feelings about.
There's a lot of them out there.
Yes. So what's your take on the World Timer, Griffin? How do you feel about them?
I think it's really cool. I mean, just on a base level, I think it's a really great addition to their lineup. I think it takes what is probably one of their most compelling watches two of their most compelling watches that already existed in the Club and the Zurich World Time and kind of mashes them together into something pretty appealing. And it's arguably I'm not going to say a better watch, but a more wearable everyday watch for less money than this complication has previously been available from Nomos. And I think that's a really cool move from the brand. Like this easily could have price matched the Zurich or been more expensive.
Yep.
And instead it's cheaper by a little over $1,000, a slightly more wearable size with more waterproofness and a bracelet for less.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
that's not something you see very often.
No. I mean, to be fair, we don't see this styling very often either.
Yeah.
These are bold. I think Nomos continues to go in the direction of bold colors and designs. But yeah, to get a world time functionality in under 10 millimeters with 100 meters of water resistance is really cool. To have the Arabic 2 and 4 break the plane of that subdial, very cool. We just saw Fair do that too, where they had the 6 kind of over the running seconds on their chronograph. Please continue doing that, Breguet. It would just be, it's a really nicely designed watch, but I think a lot of people have gripes with the overall design language.
So when these first came out, I saw the one that I have on the screen now, the Sport Neomatic World Timer Blue, and then there's the silver, which I guess these are the two non-limited open series. And to be honest, like I was very underwhelmed by these. Again, I'm not like a design expert, but I think that NOMOS has like leaned into the club very heavily over the last several years, and I think it's like, again, my personal taste is like a little boring, and I feel like the design of these two watches felt like the world timer functionality and the subdials were just kind of, I don't know, like the design didn't feel quite as like well composed, and like form wasn't meeting function, and I don't know, there's just something off about these. The pushers just felt the pusher felt very chunky and just sort of thrown on, and the crown felt like it was kind of jutting out. And again, like these aren't the most sophisticated, takes on design, but there was just something about this that just like didn't really sit right with me.
Sure.
It was like, I didn't really love the sort of sunray dial treatments. Just like a lot about these just like did not sit with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then seeing them with the limited colorways totally changes it for me.
In a good way?
In a good way. Okay. So, like, I'll say this. They feel much more sporty to me. They feel much more rugged to me. They feel like watches that you could take off the bracelet and put on a nylon strap or a leather strap or whatever the case may be. First of all, the colors are amazing. I think that they, this is another comment that I said when those original watches came out. I said, like, this to me does not flex the NOMOS design muscle that I'm used to.
Sure.
These 100% do. Like for the color theory here, like the use of color to me just screams like we have design chops and we understand how to use color in interesting ways and sort of take risks, but help it make it feel composed. So it sort of checks those boxes, feels more rugged. I love the sort of hidden subdial at 6 o'clock. I love the sort of like horizon design of the, I don't know, just these to me are great. Like these are so much better. I have to see them in person. Still would love to see like, maybe like a departure from the club dial layout. Maybe again, I get the club is a franchise that they're really pushing hard, but these to me make so much more sense. They feel very true NOMOS. Like, again, not to steal or like, but Devin, you and I were talking about this, and you were saying you weren't a fan of like all the colors dropping at once. But I don't know if we have the book behind us, but there's a NOMOS dictionary that they used to produce, which they don't produce anymore, I don't think, but you could get it from them, and we have a copy of it. And it's this little bright orange book, and it sort of takes you through the history of NOMOS, and like they have all these really great just like breakdowns of all their old watches. And it feels like these could be pages in that catalog.
Sure.
Like it feels very true to like old school NOMOS.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I love that. Little gripes, like again, the pusher and the crown feel like very abrupt and jarring to me, but again, if this is intended to be like more of like a sporting traveler than like a refined traveler, it makes sense.
Beach to boardroom.
Yeah, exactly. Would love to see, a non-polished center link version of the bracelet.
Sure.
But yeah, again, I'm ranting, but these colors make so much more sense to me. I don't know how you guys feel.
I think I'm probably with you. I'm curious, is there one of the 6 that jumps out at either of you?
No.
Or I guess one of the 8?
I don't want to be too much of like a stand for these, but like I think they're all great. Like I think that the dark gray version is probably the safe one, Volcano, and but it's different enough. Like I love the like green and the mix of like the blue sky on the subdial there. Like it feels very kind of like safari adventure vibes. The
Glacier is, if I had to pick one, the Glacier is the one that I would lean towards.
Yeah.
But I said the same thing when the Tangente 38 or whatever. How many colors were there? There were like 37 colors,
lot,
31 colors.
Too
many colors. I said the same thing then, that I thought that the color scheme was a little bit aggressive and definitely just wasn't for me. And I love the fact that there were a lot of people out there who felt the complete opposite, where there was one color that spoke to them and that was the one that they were going to get, and they all fought for it because they were limited and whatever. I think that's very cool. I think it's great that a brand is out there doing that. I just look at these and I love the movement details. I love the fact that we get, again, 100 meters world timer, 10 mil thick, like awesome movement. But overall, like, the design language is just not there for me. There are a lot of details I really like, but it's just a bit off.
Yeah. I will say it does slightly continue to bother me that Nomos insists on calling this a world timer function when it's not at all.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Well, a world timer actively shows the time in every time zone it displays. So, like, if you think about a Patek world time, that disc actually, like, there's either that moves or there's a hand that moves in relation to it that shows you a constant every time zone. And these are really a push button GMT or push button dual time zone watch.
Yeah.
Which is a great functionality, but it's not quite a world timer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can understand that. So again, just to sort of explain the functionality of this, we're looking at one straight on. You can see there's a small red dot or sort of line at 12 o'clock underlining London. Presumably, you would say, I'm in London, so therefore the time here is 10:10 or 10 whatever they have here. But then, and you have your 60-second counter at 6 o'clock. But then as you sort of travel around that disc on the outer edge, you have your other countries. So presumably, like, where that country name falls. So like LAX or, city. So LAX is at 8 o'clock. So presumably that's where the hour hand would be if you were in Los Angeles, correct?
Yeah.
So it's not an active showcasing of the time so much as like a reference point on the home time.
Yeah. I mean, you do have the 24-hour subdial too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that change independently?
The 24-hour subdial is your home time.
Yeah.
I think. And then when you do the push button advance, it changes what city it's displaying and moves the hour hand.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
If it's consistent with Zurich.
So wouldn't that then be a true world timer then? Or you're saying no? Because it is like an active showcasing of the time?
It's an active show, like on a Patek world time, there's like a 24-hour disc that rotates with the dial and lines up the current hour with every time zone. And that's what, like, separates a Patek world time from a Patek travel time. This is basically a travel time complication.
Okay.
It's similar to calling out like a caller versus traveler GMT.
Yeah.
Where it's a bit of a simplified complication, but it still effectively does the same thing.
Yeah. But like, whereas a Patek world time, like, if I look at the dial and I look at, I don't know, say I'm in London and I look at New York on the outer ring, it'll directly show me what time it is in New York without me having to change the time zone.
Okay.
But
interesting.
This is not worth getting into anymore now. They're
but
cool watches.
But generally speaking, so you guys are a nay on these.
I'm probably pro, but I probably would still choose the Zurich world time over these. What about you, Devin?
I'm a nay. I like the Zurich world time. I like the styling of that a whole lot more. I think there's a lot of design details here that I hope they carry over, but overall, I'll pass.
I have a feeling that I think I'd like to see these in person, and I have a feeling my opinion might become more pro once I've had one on the wrist for a little bit.
Sure. I mean, that's true with Nomos, right? Like, they always wear a little bit better than you expect them to.
Yeah, I've always had mixed feelings about the Zurich world timer.
They're much cooler in person than they show up online. Yeah. I'll put it out there like that.
Yeah.
And again, I just love that these exist and that they did all the moves that you would like, that they made them cheaper, that they made them more rugged. That is what I really love about these watches.
Yeah. Yeah, the Zurich world timer right now is at 6,100, so it's considerably more affordable than that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. No,
and honestly, probably a lot more wearable too, because the Zurich world time does wear a little chunky. So.
Yeah.
And if we're looking at Patek right now, I should say I'm also slightly underwhelmed by Patek's entire new offering.
I don't know if I actually I didn't pull them up. We haven't
talked. There are so many brands. We haven't even talked about Grand Seiko.
Yeah. Maybe we need to do this again.
I think we have to.
Yeah, because we're coming up on 2 hours, and I have other things on my schedule.
But there are a lot of brands that we haven't talked about, and plus, not to mention too, we have people on the show floor who haven't quite experienced some of these brands who might be able to give us a good insider take on them.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe this is a good place for us to jump, tease people a little bit with conversation of some other brands that you know and love.
There's some big ones. There's some really big ones we haven't touched.
Yeah. Well, Griffin, I'm going to let you go, but thank you again for joining. Yeah. I'm sure you're going to have thoughts and feelings on the blog about Watches and Wonders stuff.
Yeah.
I'm confident.
Well, yeah, and you can also, we threw up on the screen your ad on Instagram, so if you want to check out Griffin's takes, it's C Griffin Bartsch at Instagram. Thanks for joining us, Griffin. It was awesome to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
I'm sure I'll be texting with you both about random watches over the next few days. So.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Can't wait.
I'm sure. All right, cool.
Talk to you
Thanks.
soon.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that I think this was a successful first live stream.
Yeah, this was awesome. I mean, we thank you to everybody who tuned in and joined us for this first ever live stream, and thanks for chatting along with us the entire time. We're sorry. We thought 2 hours was going to be enough for us to get through a lot of new releases.
Yeah.
And there are so many that we haven't talked about. Honestly, there were so many more JLC models that I wanted to talk about. We kind of skipped through Cartier a little quick. Didn't even touch on Vacheron, didn't touch on Patek, didn't touch on Hermes. We didn't. There's so many brands out there that we didn't touch on. And to not even hit Grand Seiko is telling.
Yeah, I think that not to inside baseball this too much, but I think that maybe it would make sense for us to try and go live, maybe not tomorrow, but the next day, so that we really have a chance to digest all of this information and sort of formulate some more thoughtful opinions about it. Not
to mention some insider stuff from our team on the ground at the Beau Rivage too for Time to Watches. Yeah,
that would be great if we could get some live from Time to Watches, because they're gonna have a bunch of brands there from I know Ming's there, Sin's there, a bunch of great brands. So
awesome. Yeah, Marathon even. Yeah,
Marathon's gonna be there. I think that that's a good idea. Maybe we could try to get them live from that show floor. Not that they're not doing enough work already as it is. This is super awesome. Thank you guys for joining the stream. Thank you for the kind comments. We're definitely going to do this again, whether it's Watches and Wonders related or it's just other live content from Morning Wound. So, so we will see you guys next time. And if you want to follow along on Watches and Wonders, make sure you go to morningwound.com, check out all the content. We're going to have more articles, podcasts. This is posted there. And obviously, if we do decide to do another live stream about Watches and Wonders, that'll get posted on Warner Wound.
Yeah, for sure. We have a very specific link to on Warner Wound, where if you bookmark that page, it will actually take you to all of the coverage that we're dropping throughout the entire week. Because we have stuff that we had a whole slew of content that went live as soon as the embargo's lifted. But then a whole lot more hands-on content, a lot of live photos, a lot of little video clips and stuff like that. So I recommend bookmarking that page so you don't lose it, because with our articles dropping, it kind of pushes everything down our homepage, and you might lose your place a little bit. So jump in there, leave some comments, and give us your hot takes on all of that stuff in those comment sections, because we try to jump in there and talk to you guys when we can.
Yeah, and I should probably be careful. I'm a big fan of constructive criticism, so if you have any tips for us, anything related to the live stream, I would love to hear it.
I saw one that 10 o'clock in London is definitely not 8 o'clock in LA. That's very true. It's 2 o'clock. So
yeah, I never claimed to be smart. I think I'm more I think probably one of the things I've said most often on podcasts and videos is that I'm an idiot. So very on brand for me.
We're just here for you. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thanks so much for watching, and we will catch you next time.